Chapter 347. In the blink of an eye, just as Mr. Chin, who didn't care about fame, was about to complete the first cosplay of his life without knowing it, an accident happened. The baitless hook he threw into the water was grabbed by a powerful force. Immediately after, he flew up from the back of the boat and was dragged into the water like a cloud. If this was the set of a horror movie, then in a moment, the water would be gurgling with blood. For example, great white sharks that like to eat liquefied gas, piranhas that like to eat penis, and so on. However, this set was made up of hot-blooded hardliners and serious historical martial artists, so Mr. Chin was able to escape unscathed. However, he was suddenly pulled into the water. In his panic, he instinctively dug blindly for a while and choked on a few mouthfuls of water. For a moment, he was so stunned that he even forgot to call for help. This was understandable. After all, this kind of godly development was truly too shocking. Think about it. A few seconds ago, he was sitting on the fishing platform. Sitting on the fishing platform calmly and leisurely, planning strategies from thousands of miles away. He felt that he was elegant and out of this world, and his wisdom was as deep as the sea. In the end, in the next second, he was dragged into the water. Anyone would be stunned if this happened to them, considering that the morale of the people on the boat was very low and that everyone was basically holed up in the cabin and cafeteria to kill time. Only the Imperial Envoy himself had the mood to come out and fish. If this matter was not handled properly, it was likely that no one on the boat would know that the Imperial Envoy had fallen into the water. Perhaps they would just continue on to Mingzhou. If such a tragic thing happened, it would probably become a psychological shadow for Mr. Chin for the rest of his life. Fortunately, although the boat was small and there was no one at the back, Wang Yuanzhong, who had been taught some life experience, was still leaning against the railing and thinking. When he heard a large splash, his heart skipped a beat. He ran over to look, and, as expected, it was the Imperial Envoy who was dog-paddling in the water. His face turned pale with fright, and he immediately called out loudly. Everyone first lowered the anchor and then jumped into the water with a splash, finally carrying the Imperial Envoy up. After boarding the boat, everyone first took care of the hot soup and dry clothes, dried their bodies, and served the Imperial Envoy properly. Only then did they begin to ask about the details, still in shock. During this time, Sir Chin allowed them to torment him like this. He still maintained an out-of-body appearance, as if he still hadn't woken up from the unforeseen event just now. He had a silly, who am I? Where am I? Who the F***CK is pulling me? Look, Wang Yuanzhong knew this wasn't going to end, so he chased everyone out. Only he and Lord Chin were left in the cabin. He rubbed his hands and stomped his feet. Brother Chin, you said you were fishing. How did it turn into fishing? Chin Hui's body was covered with a blanket. She didn't seem to notice and muttered, "What's going on? It doesn't make sense." Wang Yuanzhong saw that something wasn't right. "What's wrong?" Chin Hui flipped out of bed and walked to the door. The fish basket he had used before he fell into the water had also been picked up by someone. The Imperial Envoy rummaged through the basket for a moment and found a ball of spare fishing line. He pulled it open. This fishing line was made from silk and a number of other tough and light materials. It wasn't the fishing gear that ordinary people use to fish. It was made in an old shop in the capital specifically for the entertainment of high officials and nobles. In terms of toughness and durability, it was much better than the twine of ordinary people. He used force to pull the fishing line. The seriousness on his face became even more apparent. He handed one end of the fishing line to Wang Yuanzhong. "Pull it well and stand firm. In a moment, when I pull you, use all your strength to resist." Wang Yuanzhong didn't know what he meant, but he had known the Imperial Envoy for many years and knew that he wouldn't speak without thinking. Since he had said this, he must have his reasons. Thus, he nodded and used his sleeve to gather his hand. He then wrapped the thin fishing line around his hand a few times through his sleeve. After he held it steady, he signaled to Chin Hui with his eyes. "It's done." Without another word, Chin Hui tugged hard. Wang Yuanzhong felt a strong force pass through his hand, but he was already prepared. He pulled his hand back. No matter how tough the fishing line was, it was still just a fishing line. Although the two of them were civil servants, the Empire was a place where martial arts flourished. Most children's first toy in their lives was a wooden sword or a wooden sword, let alone young people like them who had just entered the official career. Thus, no matter how tough the fishing line was, it couldn't withstand the force of two experts. It stretched endlessly. After a moment of deadlock, it broke with a snap. The recoil came. Wan Yuanzhong took a step back, but Qin Hui's body only swayed a little. The difference in the martial arts between the two was obvious at a glance. Wan Yuanzhong praised. Brother Qin's lower body martial arts are truly exceptional. However, Qin Hui didn't have a trace of complacency. Instead, a look of surprise appeared on his face. As expected, what happened? He looked at the broken half of the fishing line in his hand and slowly said, "After I threw the fishing line, I felt the hook being pulled by a force. In an instant, I was pulled into the water. Although this foolish brother's ability is not great, but my martial arts are still passable. The moment I was pulled by this force, the martial arts that I have cultivated all these years showed its effect. I almost instinctively used my martial arts to resist, but it was useless. I was directly pulled into the water. You also saw it just now. Although the fishing line is tough, it was still unable to resist the pull of the two of us. But just now, it was able to easily pull me into the water, even though I was resisting with all my strength. You were pulled into the water?" Wan Yuanzhong finally reacted. "I was wondering why you jumped into the water. What pulled you into the water?" Qin Hui smiled bitterly. "I don't know. I was just pulled into the water. I didn't notice any living things around me. After the other party pulled me in, they didn't do anything to me. They didn't even appear in front of me. I don't even know where they are or if they're still there." Wan Yuanzhong frowned and said, "So they ran away? Could it be that the turtle spirit that has lived for thousands of years and already has spirituality because it was greedy for the bait and bit the hook? In a moment of anger, it pulled Brother Qin into the water with brute force and escaped after breaking free from the hook. As for why the fishing line didn't break, maybe it was just a coincidence." As soon as he finished speaking, he felt a chill penetrate his skin from an unknown source, and he couldn't help but shiver. Qin Hui was thinking about something and didn't notice the strangeness of his friend. He sighed. "It won't bite the hook. There's no bait on the hook, and the hook is straight." Then, Wan Yuanzhong looked at his friend and superior, as if he was looking at a retard. After all, with his current state of mind and style, he couldn't understand the beauty of fishing with a straight hook. After a long while, he said in a subtle tone, "Brother Qin, I know you're an extraordinary person and do extraordinary things, but you should be more normal. In my opinion, it's very likely that some big water demon that has become a spirit suddenly found the hook you threw down while swimming along the canal. It remembered the old times when it was frightened and avoided fishermen when it was young and wanted to play a trick on you. However, when it saw that you didn't put any bait on the hook and even used a straight hook, it was annoyed that you're so lazy when fishing and looked down on the water demons. So it played a little trick on you and then left." This explanation wasn't too far-fetched. After all, in the divine central continent, although the concept of ghosts and gods was still vague, demons did exist. During the Great War of Tianyuan, human beings fought side by side with some demons who knew the big picture and resisted the sky demon. As civil servants, they were no strangers to demons. Those long-lived monsters had different original forms, different experiences, and different personalities. Some were gentle and kind, some were vicious and evil, some were innocent and naive, and some were black-bellied and willful. Although the probability of a monster doing such a thing was small, it wasn't surprising. Moreover, Lord Qin seemed to be in the wrong in this matter. Wan Yuanzhong cursed in his heart and glanced at his boss again. Straight hook, no bait. As long as it was a fish or turtle monster with intelligence, it would feel that its race and intelligence had been insulted. It would drag you into the water and soak you in it to scare you. Other than that, it would neither bite you nor drown you. It would not even show itself. It would just tease you and then leave. Such a monster could not be any friendlier. Qin Hui frowned. His instinct told him that it wasn't so simple. But Wan Yuanzhong's explanation was reasonable. After thinking it over, It seemed that this was the only explanation that could clear up all the doubts. However, he still doubted the probability of encountering such a powerful old water demon on the canal. He pondered for a moment and suddenly said, "Brother Yuanzhong, what if the one who dragged me into the water wasn't a demon, but a human? So what?" Yuanzhong was stunned. He looked at the fishing line in his hand and said, "With a fishing line, you were dragged into the water effortlessly, and the fishing line didn't break. If this was done by a human, the strength and skill of this person would be shocking. Not to mention that such a master doesn't exist in the world. Even if there is, he must be a top figure in the world. Such a great grandmaster who would hide in the water to pull your hook and leave without doing anything after dragging you into the water. Who in the world has so much free time? If he wanted to harm you, he could have just gotten on the boat. Why would he hide in the water?" That was true. Qin Hui nodded and then sighed. After thinking it over, Brother Yuanzhong's speculation is still the most appropriate. "I didn't think that we would encounter such a strange thing on the way to Mingzhou on the Emperor's orders," Yuanzhong huffed. "Speaking of which, although you didn't do well in this matter, you are an imperial envoy. To be dragged into the water by this demon is simply, no one knows. We are under the Emperor's orders, so we can't complicate matters. Let's not mention this matter again. Besides, we are people of indomitable spirit. Traveling on the river by boat is originally using the territory of the water tribe. It is also our fault that we bumped into a great demon who has been cultivating for a long time. I don't know if that demon elder has left." Qin Hui waved his hand. "How about this, Brother Yuanzhong? I'll have to trouble you to go and ask the chef on the boat to prepare some offerings of fruit wine and set up a table at the stern of the boat to apologize to this demon elder and express my apologies." Yuanzhong was stunned and said reluctantly, "You were dragged into the water, and you still have to apologize to him." Qin Hui waved his hand. "All right, there's no need to say more. Brother Yuanzhong, just do as I say. I'm a little cold, so I'll go to bed and rest." Hearing Qin Hui's words, Yuanzhong had no choice but to leave the cabin and walk resentfully to the kitchen. Hearing the footsteps of her friend slowly fade away, Qin Hui lay on the bed and looked at the ceiling with a smile. Brother Yuanzhong is still too young and inexperienced. He needs to be honed, but this is also good, Sai. Sooner or later he will understand that face and dignity are nothing. If that great demon hasn't gone far and is secretly observing me, how could it not be happy to see me being so respectful and humble? I bumped into it, but it only pulled me into the water and gave me a small punishment. It must be a gentle monster, seeing that I was still so respectful even after suffering a loss. It must feel bad in its heart. If I perform a little more, it might show up and befriend me. In this way, I can get to know a big monster with a profound cultivation base and a gentle personality. Every friend, every relationship, and every favor are all chess pieces placed on the chessboard. It's never too much, because these intertwined together are the foundation of a person's life. Maybe in a few years, an occasional friendship will become a lifesaver. Compared to this, so-called dignity and face are not worth mentioning. Even if it has left, or if it doesn't want to show up, so what? I didn't lose anything, but I have the opportunity to get to know a new helper. Why not? Sigh, Brother Yuanzhong, you're still too young. He snuggled into the blanket and curled his body up comfortably, enjoying the warm feeling of being surrounded by her. But suddenly, a thought appeared in his mind. What if the other party is really a person? But then, he was amused by himself. He could never change his paranoia. How could there be such a bored, peerless expert in the world, who would stay in the water and specially follow my boat, waiting to pull me into the water when I was fishing? Then, without doing anything, he would just swagger away? Is the water in the canal very clean? Finally, the Imperial envoy pulled the blanket over his head. Who cares? If it's really a person, I definitely can't resist. Then why am I thinking about this? I'll wait for him to come again. As expected, he came. After sleeping for 2 to 4 hours in the afternoon, Lord Qin was awakened by a series of knocks on the door. He rubbed his eyes and sat up. "Who is it? Come in." The door was suddenly pushed open, and Yuanzhong ran in a panic. The fruit wine offerings were all eaten. There were even marks left on the table. Could it really be a demon from the water tribe? Lord Qin's eyes widened, and he immediately became alert. He rolled out of bed and asked, "What marks? Who ate it? Did anyone see it?" No one saw it. When we found out that the offerings were gone, there wasn't even a shadow around. There were some strange symbols on the table. I can't explain it clearly. You can see for yourself. Wan Yuanzhong stretched out his hand and gestured. It's probably a cross, a vertical stroke, and the remaining symbol seems to be Chinese. Chapter 348. By the time Lord Qin and Wan Yuanzhong hurried to the stern of the ship, a group of people had already gathered around the table, exclaiming in amazement. It was broad daylight, but the piping hot offerings on the table had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind this strange mark. Perhaps there really was a water spirit behind this. Wan Yuanzhong shouted to disperse the crowd. Qin Hui walked forward and took a closer look. She saw 3 strange symbols on the table, probably written with a chicken leg. Just as Wan Yuanzhong said, there was a cross, a vertical stroke, and a snake-like symbol. It looked like a foreigner script. People always had a sense of awe for things they didn't understand. These 3 strange symbols seemed to have an extraordinary meaning in everyone's eyes. They even represented the completion of some kind of ritual. For a moment, there was a lot of discussion. Is it a name? Or is it a mark of our trip here? Or is it some kind of hint? Qin Hui and Wan Yuanzhong looked at each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. Even these 2 talented civil officials didn't know, let alone the other crew members. Wan Yuanzhong hesitated for a moment and pointed. The first word is correct. Is it this demon senior who wants something from us? 10. And this our word, which is connected from top to bottom, means that it wants 10 s that are connected from top to bottom? What is an S? Is this symbol a snake? He pondered. This big demon wants to eat snakes? It's a water demon. Why would it like to eat snakes? Is it a water snake? Yes. Is it because it was preyed on by water snakes when it was young? Is that why it hates snakes? What do water snakes like to eat? Fish and frogs. Oh, could it be that this demon senior is... Qin Hui secretly kicked Wan Yuanzhong. This brother Wan Yuanzhong was smart, but he was still too shallow. Some demons had strange habits. If he heard others talking about his original form, he might get angry. However, as a mature and steady man, Lord Qin had always been very quick-witted. It didn't matter if he didn't understand the meaning. The key was that this big demon left a mark on the offering table. Not to mention other things, this meant that the first exchange was completed. Since there was a first exchange, there was hope for further exchanges. Thinking of this, he immediately asked the captain to prepare the props. The imperial envoy personally gave the order, and everyone worked very efficiently. Soon, the second table of offerings was prepared, and it was several times more plentiful than the first table. Then he gathered everyone on the ship to the stern and burned incense as a ceremony. He looked at the canal and prayed, "I am Qin Hui, Yiming. I am on the way to Mingzhou on business by the imperial order. On the way, I was mischievous and unruly. I offended Senior. I was really sorry. Fortunately, Senior is magnanimous and gave me a small punishment as a warning. Yiming is sincerely grateful. However, Senior's handwriting, forgive me for being stupid, but I really don't know. If you have any request, please tell me. Yiming will definitely do it with all my strength and will not dare to refuse." He bowed like this a few times and finished burning incense. Then, he slowly led everyone away. The imperial envoy immediately ordered everyone to not peek at the stern of the ship. He would deal with it after dark. After everyone left, Qin Hui returned to his cabin. He couldn't help the excitement and pride in his heart. He smiled slightly. Not to mention that I didn't understand. Even if I did, I would pretend to be crazy and ask you to come out. Just now, I was very respectful and casually pointed out that I was actually an imperial envoy. You dragged the imperial envoy into the water and inadvertently caused trouble. How could you not be shocked? Although the demon race is powerful, there's still a head lower than the empire. You offended the imperial envoy who represents the majesty of imperial power. If the empire wanted to pursue the matter, Even a few demon kings wouldn't be able to protect you. Under these circumstances, I was still so respectful and modest, tolerating everything, turning a big matter into a small matter. How could you not be moved? Since you were moved, how could you not come up and say a few words? How could you not talk to me? Since I have seen your face, how can I let you go before I become friends with you? Yes, the only thing worth worrying about is that after I return to court, someone will use this matter to make an issue out of it. They will say that I bowed and bent my knee to a demon, lost the strength of an imperial envoy, and disgraced the dignity of the imperial family. That's right. Other than completing this mission beautifully, when I return to court, I will find another reason to refute. First, I will say that this trip was low-key and that I didn't hang any imperial envoys along the way because I was thrifty and diligent. Then, I will say that I knew that the matter in Lu Town was related to the demon race and that I didn't want to have a conflict with the demon race at this juncture. If Xiong Air messed up the matter, it would show that I understood the big picture. How stable. Lord Qin Hui was moved by his wisdom that was as deep as the sea. He was slightly happy and laid down on the bed, humming a little song to pass the time. After the agreed 2 hours, he jumped up and opened the door. At this time, the sun was already setting in the west, but the sky was still bright. Wan Yuanzhong had already rushed over and shouted, "Brother Qin, Lord, there are words." Qin Hui was overjoyed and ran over with Wan Yuanzhong. As he ran, he asked, "What words? Did you see them?" "I didn't see them," Wan Yuanzhong shouted. "After hearing the boatman's report, I immediately came to find you. I will go and see with Brother Qin." The two of them walked quickly to the stern of the boat, where people had gathered again. When they saw that Lord Qin had come, they sensibly separated to make a path. The two of them hurriedly walked past, and the various offerings on the table were all eaten up as expected. On the table, there were greasy words that seemed to be written with chicken legs. When the two of them saw it, they were both stunned. There was only one word written on it, and it was a word that they could recognize. It was not strange words like tin, ar, is, or other strange words. Go. What does this mean? His surname is Go? Wan Yuanzhong wondered. What does he want to say? Qin Hui pondered for a moment before slowly shaking her head. I'm afraid not. It's often used to concoct beauty pills to preserve one's beauty. It's sought after by many women from noble clans and famous sects. Could it be that this senior wants this? The two of them were at a loss for a moment and were naturally dissatisfied. They felt that this monster was too damn troublesome and refused to finish talking. Qin Hui was hesitant, but still chose the safest way. In this day and age, it was important to take advantage of others. Treating people to a meal could solve most problems. Therefore, he asked the cook to prepare another table of offerings, and then held another incense-burning ceremony. Once again, he greeted this senior of the monster race cordially, and then asked him if he wanted to go grass. Then he asked him to make sure that he was more complete and that he was a mortal with low intelligence and couldn't understand the senior's meaning. In short, he was very humble. Anyway, as a monster of the Order faction, he definitely wouldn't hit a smiling face. But soon, Lord Qin knew that he was wrong. This senior seemed to think that these humans were too stupid and couldn't understand his meaning. Not long after Lord Qin returned to the cabin, he heard an earth-shattering roar from outside before he sat down. A.M. Ungra! This unknown third-order tone seemed to be the most terrifying incantation, clearly ringing in everyone's ears. That voice seemed to contain an ancient and mysterious power, even resonating with the world, thus forming an incomprehensible natural phenomenon. A huge explosion, like thunder, sounded out of nowhere, the huge sound waves whistling through the air, even causing the ship to tremble a little. This roar is a secret technique of the monster race. That big monster is angry. Qin Hui's heart skipped a beat. She pushed open the cabin door, and her face was full of shock. Above the canal, water vapor surged, and a strong wind whistled in her ears. Then, the water splashed all over the sky and turned into a drifting rain. The wind was strong, and the rainstorm came suddenly. The water splashed on the river, and the boat under her feet swayed. Suddenly, with a crack, the main mast of the boat broke. The sound of wind and clouds surging, and the momentum of the stormy sea was comparable to that of a storm. Footsteps sounded beside her. When Yuanzhong rushed over shakily. Facing the terrifying phenomenon, he said with a pale face, "God, this monster's ability to control the power of the water element. I'm afraid it's almost on par with the water radiant sword saint." As soon as he finished speaking, a wave appeared out of nowhere in the water, and Yuanzhong staggered and almost hit the wall. Qin Hui saw that the situation was not good, so she pulled Yuanzhong up and then shouted to the sky, "Senior, I don't know how I offended you, but please tell me. I'm willing to apologize. There are dozens of creatures on this boat, and they all have families. They have never offended you, so please have mercy on them." What responded to him was another roar of the third order. "Samo, Tims, Naiyu." This roar was like a knife, and it resounded in everyone's heart, awakening the most primitive fear in their hearts. For a moment, the wind and rain became more violent, and the boat shook violently. Whirlpools of various sizes appeared on the water surface, and even the riverbed was shaking slightly. Everyone on the boat screamed in fear. Some cried for their parents, and some begged for mercy. When the enemy was strong enough to command the sky and the river, who would dare to fight for their lives? Qin Hui wanted to say more, but the captain stumbled over and shouted, "Sir, we can't do it. If the boat continues to shake like this, I'm afraid it will capsize. We have to make plans early." Qin Hui gritted her teeth and saw that it was not the head. She shouted, "Then what should we do?" The captain shouted, "Go ashore. Let's go ashore. We can't stay on the water anymore. Sir, hurry up and pack up the important things. Let's go ashore quickly." Yuanzhong was first knocked over by the waves, fell, and was confused. Hearing this, he said happily, Yes. He's just a monster in the water, most likely a fish spirit. After going ashore, he won't be able to do anything to us." Qin Hui gave him a hard shove, then turned around and rushed into the room. "Stop talking." After all, the captain was the captain. He had seen many storms and could be said to be decisive. After making a decision, he immediately ordered loudly, "Prepare to dock and anchor. Be careful, you must jump on a land. Don't jump into the water first. I repeat, don't King jump into the water. There's a monster in there." Fortunately, this was a canal and not the sea. Although the Grand Canal was said to connect the north and south, the longest part was only about 30 meters. It was not wide for a person who could swim, much less a boat. In the hands of this group of men who were used to rowing boats and paddling, it was a small hook that could be easily crossed. Therefore, although the river was turbulent and stormy, with everyone's concerted efforts, the boat still rushed to the riverbed under the push of manpower and the sail. The sailors and passengers were already prepared. They only took the lightest things. Some were even empty-handed. They hurriedly climbed down from the side of the boat and ran toward the depths of the shore. Qin Hui brought official documents, imperial edicts, and royal orders that could prove her identity as an imperial envoy. Together with Yuanzhong, she followed them ashore in a sorry state. On the shore, the wind and rain were still blowing, but with their feet on solid ground, this group of people who had almost peed their pants in fear felt an unprecedented sense of security. It was such a happy thing to be indomitable. Unfortunately, this ordinary happiness did not last long. A third angry roar came from behind them. Two, Sunpa. Everyone's ears exploded. Then they saw the most terrifying thing they had ever seen in their lives. Under everyone's gaze, the boat that had rushed to the shore seemed to be twisted by an invisible force. Then, with a loud bang, it broke into two pieces. Everyone looked at each other. Then, with a shout, they turned and ran. They only hated that their parents had not given birth to them with two more legs. This monster's power was so great, and its magic was so terrifying that it could break a boat in half. If such a terrifying magic hit their bodies, how could they survive? Damn it, how do we provoke this kind of monster? The captain followed closely beside Qin Hui. He did not forget to shout, Sir, My boat. If I report that it was damaged in battle, will the higher-ups believe me? Qin Hui shouted as she ran. It's more important to survive first. When the time comes, I'll help you testify. I'll definitely get you a bigger and better one. The group of people ran as fast as they could along the ridges on both sides of the river. The sound of the wind and rain behind them gradually faded away. It seemed that it was just as one Yuanzhong had said. This monster seemed to be a fish spirit. It could not go ashore and could only swim in the water. As long as it went ashore, it would be too far away for it to catch up. The dozens of people ran for a while with wet clothes like crazy. Finally, they stopped in a small forest to rest. Everyone looked at each other and suddenly had the urge to cry. It was the first time they were traveling as imperial attendants, and the first time they could eat and drink at public expense. These two things were happy together. They should have had a dreamlike time. Why? Why did they suddenly encounter a monster while they were on a boat? One Yuanzhong wiped the water off his face and said hatefully, "Go to the nearby prefectural city and find the garrison there. Show your identity and order them to kill the monster immediately." I don't believe that no matter how strong this monster's power is, it can resist our cavalry. Qin Hui did not say a word. No one could understand the sadness in her heart. Lord Qin looked at the exhausted attendants and smiled bitterly in his heart. Do we have to go to Mingzhou like this? What is this? We're going to Mingzhou as imperial envoys. How do we encounter such a terrible thing? Fortunately, everything was simple this time. Otherwise, it would be difficult to explain if we lost the honor of the imperial envoys, he said slowly. It seems that we can only go to the relay station and the prefectural city to get fast horses and go by land. I hope there won't be any more problems on the way. Chapter 349. Things were very interesting. It was indeed impossible to predict a person's fate. Who would have thought that the imperial envoy, Serene, and his party, who had been ordered by the emperor to keep a low profile and investigate a case in Mingzhou, would suddenly encounter a demon on the water? Furthermore, this monster's demonic power was very loud. Not only did it stir up a storm in the canal, it also tore the imperial envoy's ship into two pieces, forcing the imperial envoy to come ashore like salted fish scared witless. This explosive development was like a fantasy story. Hearing it, the officials at the relay station were tongue-tied. They almost thought they had met a fake imperial envoy. Fortunately, there were imperial edicts and various documents that could prove one's identity. The officials at the relay station finally believed Qin Hui's identity and sent people to quickly investigate the area involved in the incident. Sure enough, they saw a ship that had been cut in half and stuck in the riverbed. It was as if someone had used a 40-meter-long broadsword to split the ship in half. This was going to be a big joke. This secondary ninth-level post-house deputy displayed a sharp political sense that surpassed his level and immediately realized that this matter was over. An imperial envoy was attacked by a monster on his way north along the river. His ship was cut in two, and he almost lost his life. Although the culprit was said to be a monster and the nature of the matter had already risen to an international and racial conflict, this did not prevent the leaders of the province, the government, and the various related departments from taking direct and indirect leadership responsibility. This was a common principle in all of history and in all of China. What? You feel wronged? Grenade-throwing Lumu, tell me, why did something happen under your jurisdiction? Why did something happen to the imperial envoy only on your territory? Why did a demon appear in the area you were in charge of, and one with antisocial personality traits? Ayaya, sir, in this kind of situation, I have to punish you for not being able to maintain stability. Just as the relay officer was panicking, Sir Qin's high emotional intelligence as an outstanding person of society and a good civil servant of the country showed itself. He first told the relay officer not to panic, and then secretly invited the prefect and general of the nearby government to come over for a chat. As for the canal, he first announced to the public that it was a civilian ship that had broken down due to years of disrepair. They were not to mention anything about the demon or that the imperial envoy's ship had been attacked. In short, they had to close the lid first. The post house officer was a smart person and immediately nodded in agreement. Although he was only a secondary Class 9 official, he was still a member of the country's civil service system. He was very familiar with the routine of reporting only the good news and not the bad news. To be on the safe side, he personally made a trip to the nearby Wuxing Manor to look for the magistrate to inform him of this matter. When the two highest-ranking officials of the Wuxing Manor heard about this, they were so scared that they almost peed themselves. They rushed to the relay station where Serene was. After verifying the identity, they didn't say anything else but asked for forgiveness. Qin Hui was such an outstanding person of society. How could she do something so stupid as to angrily denounce and threaten to file a complaint? He first turned pale with fright and helped the two apologetic local officials up. Using an amiable and warm smile, he began to chat with the two officials. The three high-ranking officials of the system were indeed skilled. With just a few words, they reached a pure friendship deal and clearly understood one thing. Old brother, maintain stability. One had to know that if news of the imperial envoy being attacked were to spread, the two officials of the manor would certainly be punished. Even Qin Hui herself would most likely be seen as incompetent and a troublemaker in court. For Sir Qin, who was obsessed with his career, this was clearly unacceptable. Rather than file a complaint and let the two officials, who had no enmity with her, suffer a great loss and leave her with a bad impression in court, she wouldn't do such a thing. This kind of thing that harms others without benefiting oneself, a wise man would not do it. It would be better to take advantage of this opportunity to make friends and sell a big favor. Wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone could help each other in the officialdom? Thus, in the hands of the resourceful Sir Qin Hui, this demon attack quickly turned from a bad thing into a good thing. He gained the friendship of a prefect and a military chief. He also received dozens of horses generously provided by the military chief, and the prefect warmly provided him with travel expenses. Although the travel expenses were a bit high, how could he not accept them? If he didn't accept them, would the prefect be at ease? The damaged ships were salvaged by the thriving Marshal Manor's men. As for the Water Clan's monster that was causing a ruckus, the chief soldier was filled with murderous intent. He patted his chest and promised that he would turn the canal upside down and capture that monster. The chief soldier's monarch weapon and military formation were no joke. After parting ways, after the imperial envoy team received the horses, Sir Qin Hui was worried about the emperor's important task. He didn't want to stay for a moment longer and continued north. In order to avoid being too conspicuous and exposing his identity, he left the crew in thriving Marshal Manor and let the locals provide them with good food and drinks. He led the imperial envoy team north. The military chief also sent a small group of cavalry guards to follow him. They disguised themselves as government soldiers going out on official business to fool the public. The group of people took turns to ride on 3 horses. By the time the sky turned dark, they had already traveled half the distance. The sky was dark, and there was still some distance before they reached the next relay station. After some discussion, they decided to set up camp and rest for the night in the wilderness. Since there were elite cavalry from thriving Marshal Manor here, everyone was brave and quickly set up their tents. They roasted some game to eat and went into their respective tents to rest. Brother Qin, little brother really admires you to the point of prostrating on all 4s this time. In the tent, one Yuanzhong clasped his fists and said to Qin Hui, "You can advance and retreat as you please. You're good at dancing and talking and turning this matter into a spring breeze and rain. Everyone is happy. In my opinion, Brother Qin, you are the one who can make clouds and rain with a flip of your hand. The demon's abilities are only small tricks. Brother Qin, you are the real Tao." Qin Hui smiled modestly. "If I had the ability of that demon senior, I wouldn't need to care about these verbal skills and waste my energy. Brother, don't belittle yourself. You must know that we humans are innately inferior to demons. We can only rely on hard work. Some people have excellent martial bones. If they practice hard, they will be able to transcend mortality and become saints. However, those who are not so talented, such as me, will have to find another way. Speaking of which, I have no choice but to do so. However, all things and all methods lead to the same destination. As long as you work hard, there will be results. These words made Wan Yuanzhong admire Qin Hui even more. He clasped his fists again and again. Suddenly, he thought of something and frowned. You still call him a demon senior? Umph. After you revealed your identity as an imperial envoy, this demon still casually attacked us and made things difficult for you. He is simply looking down on the imperial court. Brother, why didn't you urge the army commander to arrest him? Qin Hui hesitated for a moment, but still said softly, this kind of martial artist is arrogant. If I blindly threaten him, I'm afraid he will feel indignant, and this matter will become twisted. That's why I advised him to be careful. It's fine if he doesn't do this. Only then can he arouse the arrogance in his heart. He looked at the lantern and said indifferently, in addition, Brother Yuanzhong, you must be broad-minded. This matter is not our private matter. A big demon dares to casually assassinate an imperial envoy. This is simply looking down on the imperial authority of the empire. This means that after the war, the demons are beginning to stir again. After finishing the task in Mingzhou, I will visit these two brothers of mine in Wuxing Manor on the way back. After discussing it, I will submit a memorial to the imperial court. If His Majesty is angry, the entire state apparatus will be mobilized. It will be much easier to crush that demon than to station an army in a prefecture. Wan Yuanzhong listened and nodded. Brother, you have great foresight. I'm not as good as you. Qin Hui sighed. All of this will be built on the basis that I properly complete this task. If I mess it up, then there's nothing left to say. Brother Qin will definitely complete the task entrusted by His Majesty this time. When you return to the imperial court, you will be conferred a title and rise to the top. Wan Yuanzhong thought of the embarrassment during the day and said hatefully, that demon is so rude. If it falls into my hands in the future, I will definitely teach it a lesson. Isn't it just a piece of trash in the water? When the time comes, I will steam it and roast it. I will definitely teach it a lesson. Qin Hui frowned and advised, Brother Yuanzhong, it is useless to make empty threats. Moreover, Wan Yuanzhong laughed and said, Brother Qin is so cautious. If that monster isn't a fish or shrimp, then it's an eel. It doesn't have any legs, so it'll die as soon as it comes ashore. How did it find its way here? I'll just curse it a few times here. Lord Qin said with a subtle expression, among the aquatic creatures, there are still some that can come ashore. Wan Yuanzhong was still laughing. Come ashore? Crabs only know how to walk sideways. Turtles are as slow as ants. No matter if it is a crab or a tortoise, we have already traveled hundreds of miles with 3 horses. Can that demon catch up? If it can, pattern, force break. Heaven and earth trembled. The majestic roar was like the cold wind from the north, and the powerful notes turned into a hurricane. Everyone's ears were shaken, and then they felt a chill run down their spines. When they looked up, they saw that an invisible force had blown away 7 or 8 tents. The violent wind wreaked havoc on the earth, announcing the arrival of a terrifying creature. The hired thugs sent by the thriving Marshall Mansion had never experienced the divine might of this mighty being of the Water Tribe. After being yelled at, they were still in a state of confusion. The elite warriors took out their weapons and lined up in a well-trained formation. They shouted, What's going on? Who was shouting just now? An enemy? Who is it? Zay, Ayud. The roar was like thunder, representing the majesty of judgment and power. It came down from the sky, and for a moment, everyone present was shocked by the unknown but mighty roar. Although they did not understand what it meant, it was as if they had seen a terrifying creature emitting endless power. The only thought in their minds was to obey. Wan Yuanzhong opened his mouth and met Qin Hui's complicated gaze. He wished he could give himself 2 tight slaps. At this moment, they heard an angry roar. It turned out that the cavalry leader of the thriving Marshall Manor waved his long saber. Relying on his profound skill and the bravery of a soldier, he forcefully broke free from the shock and shouted angrily, Who dares to challenge the imperial power? If you have the guts, come out and eat my saber. This lieutenant could be considered as the #1 figure in the thriving martial arts manner's army. His martial arts skills had won the general's favor. Otherwise, he would not have been assigned to this escort mission. Seeing his thunderous roar and refined saber light, everyone could tell that his skills were indeed extraordinary and profound. Everyone hoped that this highly skilled lieutenant would be able to reverse the situation in one fell swoop and scare off the strong enemy. But in the next moment, there was no enemy coming out to confront him. Instead, the lieutenant suddenly screamed. His face looked as if he had seen a ghost. His entire body rose into the air as if he had been captured by an invisible hand. He was dragged into the distant darkness like he was riding on a cloud. Accompanied by the lieutenant's horrified screams, a terrifying roar came from the darkness once again. Juan, Sekender, Pritz. It was still a language that they could not understand, but this time the roar was no less than the call of the king of hell. They looked at each other and then shouted, repeating the escape during the day. One after another, they rushed onto their war horses and galloped away. For a moment, people shouted and horses neighed. The situation was chaotic. It had become a pot of porridge. One Yuanzhong rode his war horse and guarded Qin Hui closely. For a moment, he was about to cry, my lord, this is really not me." Qin Hui did not know whether to laugh or cry. She shouted, "Everyone, this is not good. This monster is most likely coming for me. I can't implicate everyone. Let's split up and run for our lives." Her words were sincere. At this critical moment, it was even more humanistic. Many people were touched and hot-headed. They shouted, "We pledge our lives to follow you, my lord." "Fool!" Qin Hui shouted as she spurred her horse forward. "We are no match for him. If we stay together, we will die even faster. We will split up and meet up in Mingzhou City. Remember, if you can't find me in Mingzhou, go to the Rangers Guild and look for General Hu Shouxin. He is an old friend of mine and has the Thunderbow. He will not sit by and do nothing. He will come to save me." Her words seemed to have angered the attacking monster. Thus, a fourth roar resounded through the sky. "American, Wallace, Yashi." Amidst this angry roar, the pitiful people galloped away. One Yuanzhong followed Qin Hui closely and shouted, "Brother Qin, I can't leave you." A complicated expression appeared on Qin Hui's face. Fortunately, it was dark, so one Yuanzhong did not see it. Mr. Qin was so touched that he shouted, "Good brother, we must all live. This place is not too far from Mingzhou. Once we reach Mingzhou City, we will be safe." One Yuanzhong was shocked and scared. As he galloped away with Qin Hui, he looked back with lingering fear. How can this guy run so fast? It is a water creature. It can go ashore and run fast. It can't be a crab or a turtle. Could it be a... Brother Yuanzhong, stop talking. In this chaotic and unforgettable night, the horses galloped toward the city in the north. They rushed toward the front line where they had fought against the Sky Demon. The young Lord Qin looked into the distance at the important city in the north. His friends were there. It meant safety and powerful companions. It meant the end of everything. But he was wrong. Perhaps when the time came, he would know that the two terrifying experiences today were only a small, insignificant foreshadowing. The real nightmare had just begun. Chapter 350. Licking his dry lips, Qin Hui trembled as he looked into the distance. The rising sun had already cast its first ray of light, and there was hope in front of them. The capital of Ming Province, the most magnificent city in the world, was located in the northern border of the empire. It had once stopped the Sky Demon from invading the south. 2 years after the end of the war, it still stood in the vast northern land. It was so majestic, so magnificent, and made people feel safe. Wan Yuanzhong, who was beside him, had already become a frightened bird. He trembled as he asked, "Sir, is that Ming Province?" The calamity of this night could not be described with words. The two of them went from fear to numbness. The changes in their emotions during this time could not be described with words. He, Qin Hui, came from a family of civil officials. He was proud of his success and was good at acting. At a young age, he was entrusted with an important task by the emperor and became an imperial envoy to the north to investigate a case. And then they encountered a monster. He was temperamental and impossible to communicate with. At first, he seemed to be reasonable, but for some reason, he went crazy. First, he cut the group's warship in half, and then he chased the two of them all the way to Ming province. That night, Qin Hui and the others rode on their horses. Every time they wanted to stop and rest, there would be an unknown roar in the sky, followed by all kinds of terrifying natural phenomena. The monster attacked like a ghost, and every time it would kidnap a person, accompanied by one Seikender, Pritz, and the victims' shocked and desperate screams, and then there was no sound. It seemed that the monster was a terrifying monster that liked to choose people to eat. In such a dark night, it was terrifying. After the ambush, Mr. Qin only had one Yuanzhong by his side. No matter how scared Brother Yuanzhong was, he still had hope in his heart. He didn't leave and was loyal to Qin Hui. This made her feel both touched and frustrated. Brother Yuanzhong's mouth, as expected, when one Yuanzhong heard that victory was in sight, he could not help but feel refreshed. A trace of hatred flashed in his eyes. He said angrily, "That monster is too much. Sir, Ming Province City is in sight. Since it's the capital of a large province in the north, there must be countless masters stationed there. That monster obviously won't dare to come again." When Qin Hui heard this, her body trembled. She couldn't help but look around like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Worry arose in her heart. As a civil servant with high social skills, he was also a reasonable person. He knew that he shouldn't put all the blame on Brother Yuanzhong, but every time Brother Yuanzhong talked about the monster to the point where he forgot himself, the monster would inevitably appear. The subtle connection between the two and the fear and anger of the whole night, indeed, needed someone to vent. He had already made up his mind. If that monster was lured here again, forget it. If it were to come again, it would either capture him or him. That would be it. On the other side, one Yuanzhong was completely unaware of his superior's complicated thoughts. He seemed to have thought of something and said with a frown, "But my lord, after one night, I seem to have figured out that something is wrong. Think about it. With that monster's ability, if it wanted to kill us all, it would be as easy as lifting a finger. Why would it chase us around like a cat playing with a mouse? Was it just for fun? Then, are the colleagues who were captured by it really dead?" He knocked his head and recalled the terrifying scene of the night. Then he shook his head and said, "No, we didn't see them. We only heard their terrified cries when they were captured. They were full of energy and didn't scream in pain. Clearly, they weren't hurt. We didn't see their bodies. We didn't even see a bloody scene." At first, Qin Hui was stunned and then secretly felt ashamed. Last night, he had been in a mess. He had only cared about running for his life and planning. Then, he had tried his best to communicate, compromise, or reach a consensus with the other party. In the end, the other party had not cooperated at all. He had been busy with this and neglected other details. He didn't remember as clearly as one Yuanzhong. He thought for a moment. As one Yuanzhong had said, there were many suspicious points in this matter. The imperial envoy's heart gradually became suspicious. He said solemnly, "Brother Wan, what else have you discovered?" There is one more discovery. From the time we were on the canal until now, have you noticed that the so-called senior of the demon race has never appeared in front of us?" One Yuanzhong said, in all seriousness, "I heard that demons with high cultivation or spirituality all have the ability to transform. They can take the form of a human and even disguise themselves so that ordinary people can't recognize them. However, this demon has never appeared. It only used its magical power to frighten us. Why is it unwilling to show itself?" A cold light flashed in Qin Hui's eyes. He seemed to have vaguely grasped some key point. He said thoughtfully, "Brother Yuanzhong, please continue. I feel that it is most likely a demon beast that can't transform for some reason. It wants to hide its identity, so it only used its magical power and didn't show itself. It can't transform into a human, but because it has cultivated, it has gained spirituality. It knows that its body is ugly, so it is ashamed to see people. Therefore, it doesn't dare to reveal its true face in front of us. The reason it captured our companions and didn't directly kill them must be because it has an evil purpose. Most likely, it has practiced an evil demonic art. It wants to slowly obtain some precious and important things from humans, such as blood and vitality. Just like the vampire bats, moreover, it is an aquatic demon. Its appearance is ugly, and it can go ashore. In summary, I deduce that its original form may be, before he finished speaking, Wan Yuanzhong saw the imperial envoy without a word. His face was dark as he mounted his horse and rushed in the direction of Mingzhou City. Leech. Wan Yuanzhong waited until Lord Qin's horse stirred up a cloud of dust before he said the latter half of his sentence. His first reaction was that his hair stood on end. He looked back in horror and found that everything was quiet. Nothing had happened. He glanced at Qin Hui and hurriedly rode after her. He shouted, "My lord, why are you running? The demon didn't come. Look, it's already dawn. How could that demon dare to show up in broad daylight and act so ferociously? Samo. Thames. Naiyu. Wah help. Ah." At this time, the sky was slightly brighter and the morning bell had rung. The 4 gates of the city were already wide open. However, there were only a few people going in and out. The cleaners still had to clean the city gates and streets. In the distance, the sound of horse hooves could be heard. 2 riders were desperately urging their horses to come. The soldiers guarding the gate subconsciously tightened their grip on their steel spears. The war had just ended, and their military training hadn't decreased yet. However, they immediately heard shouts coming from the other side. "Urgent, urgent! Move, move! I am the special envoy of the imperial court. The special envoy of the imperial court." The guards at the gate saw that the 2 of them seemed to be in a hurry and that they were shouting in a proper manner. In addition, the gate was already open and there were only 2 people on the other side. Therefore, they shouted loudly for the people at the gate to disperse. They cautiously took a few steps back and watched as the 2 of them rode in. Qin Hui and Wan Yuanzhong's faces were extremely pale. There was a hint of madness in their fear. Wan Yuanzhong followed behind and shouted with difficulty, "My lord, are we going to the provincial governor's office or the general's office?" Qin Hui gritted her teeth and said, "We're not going anywhere. Let's go to Mingzhou's loyalty tower first." Fortunately, Lord Qin was a mature man and had done a lot of homework before coming. He memorized the map of Mingzhou City in his heart and remembered the important places clearly. At this time, he was able to distinguish the direction with a glance. He shouted for the people to move out of the way as he rushed toward Loyalty Tower with all his might. When the 2 arrived, the ranger on duty inside heard the sound of horses and came out curiously to take a look. However, he saw 2 battered men rolling off their horses. The one in the lead looked like a dog that had almost been raped by a wolf. He took 2 steps forward and bowed deeply. In a trembling voice, he said, "May I trouble you to report to General Hu Shoshin that an old friend has come to visit? Please ask him to take the time to meet me. This humble one is very grateful." Old friend again. The ranger looked as if he had just been hit by a dog. He sized up Qin Hui and cursed in his heart. "Motherf Asterisker, an old friend of Guild Head, who's came knocking on our door 2 days ago. He beat up the entire Zhongyi Tower, including the Guild Head. If you ask me, your circle of old friends is really messy. Today, another old friend of yours came, and he looked as if he had been beaten up badly. Could it be that this old friend of yours was beaten up by another old friend and came to seek justice from General Hu?" However, although he cursed inwardly, he still had to do the job. The ranger courteously invited the 2 of them in to serve them tea. He then asked someone to inform Hu Shoshin on the 3rd floor. Not long after, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Hu Shoshin came down the stairs and happened to meet Qin Hui's eyes. When Qin Hui saw Hu Shoshin's fierce-looking face and bulky physique, he was like a wanderer who had left home for a long time and finally saw his mother. He almost burst into tears. Clearly, in this cold world where demons ran rampant and imperial envoys were useless, Hu Shoshin's arm which could run horses and smash rocks with his chrysanthemum, gave the miserable and pitiful Sir Cheen an infinite sense of security. For a moment, Cheen Huey's heart was filled with all kinds of emotions. He stood up and ran forward. He lowered his head and bowed. With tears in his eyes, he called out, "Brother!" Hu Shouxin turned pale with fright and quickly helped Cheen Hui and Wan Yuanzhong up. He looked at their pale faces, panicked eyes, and dust-covered and scratched clothes. He then looked out the door and said in shock, "Brother, how did you end up like this? Didn't you come to Mingzhou on official business? Where are your attendants?" Cheen Huey's lips trembled, and his eyes were miserable. It was as if he had thousands of words waiting to be said. In the end, he gripped Hu Shouxin's hand in grief. He thought of the terrifying experience and the fear he had experienced along the way. He said in a pained voice, "Brother, it's hard to explain in a few words." Hu Shouxin saw that this was not a problem, so he shouted to a ranger, "Go take care of my brother's horse, and then go find 2 sets of new clothes, boil some water, prepare some food, and pick out 2 sets of good rooms for my brother to rest in." Before he finished speaking, Cheen Hui gripped Hu Shouxin's hand a little tighter. The imperial envoy shook his head and said, "Brother, these are all small matters. I have something important to report to you." Only then did Hu Shouxin come back to his senses. This old brother in front of him had come to Mingzhou by imperial edict. He had the identity of an imperial envoy, but now he had only escaped in a sorry state with one of his attendants. The imperial envoy guards were nowhere to be seen. It had to be known that the imperial envoy represented the emperor in exercising his power. If something happened, it was equivalent to slapping the emperor in the face. This was no small matter. He nodded solemnly and brought the 2 to the study on the 3rd floor. He first served them hot tea and pastries and let them eat whatever they wanted to calm their minds. After the 2 finished eating, Hu Shouxin said with a serious expression, "Brother, if anything happens, don't hesitate to tell me. Don't be afraid. Once you're in Mingzhou, it's like you're in a military camp. No one can touch you." Cheen Hui bowed with tears in his eyes. "Brother is so righteous. I'm extremely grateful." "Don't say that. You scholars talk too much nonsense. You and I are brothers who have gone through life and death together. We have a friendship formed by killing in the past." Hu Shouxin helped Cheen Hui up and said with a frown, "Tell me what happened first." "I received a letter saying that as an imperial envoy, you came to Mingzhou to judge a case on behalf of the emperor." "Why? Where are the guards?" Cheen Hui was ashamed and said with tears in his eyes, "I'm useless. I provoked a demon on the canal. The guards, I'm afraid they're in danger." Before he finished speaking, the 2 of them felt their skin go numb. Then a thunderous sound rang in their ears. Wan Yuanzhong raised his head and found that the purple light in Hu Shouxin's eyes was jumping. The power of thunder was surging in this Tianyuan general's body. Hu Shouxin's eyes became fierce. "Demon? Attacking an imperial envoy? How dare you?" He was murderous. An imperial envoy was equivalent to the emperor himself. Attacking the imperial envoy guards was no different from assassinating the emperor. For any soldier of the empire, this was no different from a humiliation and provocation. Hu Shouxin said coldly, "These demons are getting more and more dishonest. We must let these animals know that this world is a flourishing age for humans. They don't have the right to be presumptuous." Old Hu looked at Cheen Hui and said firmly, "Brother, don't worry. I'll help you vent your anger. The Thunder Bow has not met a worthy opponent for a long time. I can't wait any longer. Today, I'll use this blind demon as a bargaining chip." "Brother, what's the demon's background?" Cheen Hui sighed. "I'm ashamed. I really don't know. That demon has never appeared in front of us. Its power is amazing, and its methods are strange. It never showed up, but we were played in the palm of its hand. First, it broke my ship, then it kidnapped our attendants one by one. I'm ashamed to say that it's like a cat playing with a mouse." "Huh?" Wan Yuanzhong nodded and added, "Yes, I've never seen such a strange monster. It can't transform, and it can't even speak human language. It's always roaring some strange cries that people can't understand. It can write, but it doesn't write much. The most common word with the most strokes is go. In addition, I think it might be go. Qin Hui looked at Hu Shou and asked curiously, "Brother, your expression looks a little strange. What's wrong?" Chapter 351. Hu Shouxin's expression was complicated. He glanced at Qin Hui, who had a miserable expression and was anxiously waiting for him to seek justice for him. "Brother, you might have encountered a fake monster. He never showed himself. His strength was astonishing, like a cat playing with a mouse, shouting words that no one could understand. Cowardly." He thought of Qin Hui's mission and the current situation. Obviously, there was no one else who could do such a crazy thing, other than a certain bastard who always said, "For the sake of the country's life and death, why should I avoid it for the sake of fortune and misfortune?" But even in his dreams, he wanted to raise the flag of rebellion and seize the position of the emperor. This guy, he did something like this behind my back again. Hu Shouxin felt his head swell. The evil fire in his heart burned. Although I knew this guy was not easy to get along with, I never thought he would do such a thing. Old Hu glanced at Qin Hui. Although the suspect had been locked in, this person's identity could not be known by Brother Qin. He remembered the gaze Sun Lang had given him that day when he had warned him, and his heart chilled slightly. He had known Sun Lang for a long time and knew whether or not Sun Lang was joking. If Brother Qin knew that Sun Lang was alive, then Sun Lang would indeed kill him. No one could persuade him otherwise. Thinking of this, Old Hu's head hurt even more. Sun Lang had beaten up the Imperial Envoy and the entire Imperial Envoy Guard. This was actually not a big deal. In any case, this guy was very astute and cleverly disguised himself as a monster, putting the blame on the Yao race. Even if the Imperial Court was furious afterward, they could only direct their anger at the group of monsters. In any case, those monsters had always been outwardly united with the Empire and had recently been very restless. If they were dealt with, then they were dealt with. In any case, they were not human. But the key problem was that based on Old Hu's understanding of Sun Lang, this guy would not stop here, destroying the Imperial Envoy's carriage, beating up the Imperial Envoy Guard, and chasing the Imperial Envoy around for an entire night could only be considered an appetizer. This Imperial Envoy had entered Mingzhou and could be considered to have walked into the tiger's mouth. This bastard had been crazy outside for 2 years. Who knew how many evil plans and tricks he had come up with, but he was too embarrassed to use them on the people he was familiar with. Coincidentally, an Imperial Envoy he had always disliked fell from the sky. It was like a young chick who had just come out to receive a guest and met a ruffian who had just returned from the army after more than a decade. Thus, Hu Shouxin looked at Qin Hui, and a kind of humanistic concern suddenly rose in his heart. No, I can't watch Brother Qin fall into the devil's claws like this. I have to protect him. Old Hu made up his mind and immediately stood up. Facing Qin Hui, he said solemnly, "Brother, I already know the situation. There's no time to lose. I'll go out and patrol. While the monster hasn't gone too far, I'll see if I can find any clues. As for you, brother, you've been running around all night and should rest first. As for the Imperial Envoy business, there's no need to worry. You and I are brothers, so I'll do my best to help you with the Mingzhou matter. The two of you should go take a bath, change your clothes, eat some food, and rest for a while." He glanced at Wan Yuanzhong and clasped his hands. "That's right. I still haven't asked for this brother's name." Wan Yuanzhong hurriedly bowed and said, "I'm Wan Yuanzhong, following beside Brother Qin and temporarily serving as the Imperial Envoy's flag bearer. Greetings, General Hu." Hu Shouxin nodded. "So it's Brother Wan. Please rest for a while, I'll go." Qin Hui suddenly thought of something and shouted, "Brother, please wait. I still have a few things to ask of you. First, my companions and attendants were separated last night. I told them to run away separately and gather at the Ranger Guild in Mingzhou City. I sincerely ask you to send a ranger to take care of them. Second, I'll write a letter and ask you to send it to the provincial governor and the chief of armed forces of Wuxing Mansion on my behalf to reassure them. Third, the emperor's order is important and I dare not delay it. I want to discuss the regulations with you." Hu Shouxin just nodded. It's fine. I'll ask my subordinates to do it." That monster is the real threat. I'll go and take a look first. The monster is the real threat? Wan Yuanzhong frowned inwardly. Ming Province is an important town in the north, where there are many experts. You, General Hu, are also a fierce general of heaven's origin, a fierce man who has fought against the extraterrestrial demons. With you here, those demons are nothing. In comparison, His Majesty's order is much more important. Why can't you distinguish between the priorities and go and catch some monster? Wan Yuanzhong couldn't help but want to say something. Qin Hui secretly pulled him away and shook her head slightly with a strange light in her eyes. Hushoshi knew nothing about this. He was leading the two to the guest room on the second floor and then ordered a capable subordinate to listen to Qin Hui's orders. After bidding farewell to the two, he left Zhongyi Tower. The ranger said politely, "The guild leader has ordered you to take a bath, rest, and eat. If you need anything, just ask. I'll be waiting outside." Qin Hui thought for a while and smiled. "My brother left in a hurry. There are some things he wants to ask you, sir." "I wonder." After hearing this, the ranger smiled. "I'm just a lackey of the guild leader. I'm a vulgar man who knows nothing. I only know how to follow orders. What do I know?" "The guild leader will be back later. If you have any questions, you can ask him yourself. If you ask me, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. I won't disturb you." Qin Hui was slightly startled, but still smiled politely. "I'm sorry for being rash. You're too kind." The imperial envoy and the ranger smiled hypocritically and then closed the door. The closed door covered the cold light that flashed through his eyes. As soon as Ushoshin stepped out of the door, his face darkened. He strode toward the immortal fishing house aggressively, as if he was going to denounce them for their crimes. As he walked, he thought, angry and amused, in a moment, this bastard will definitely deny it. I wonder what kind of ridiculous expression he will put on to pretend to be pitiful. Pretend my ass. In this big country, other than you, who else would do such a thing? Especially that word. I knew it was you as soon as I heard it. However, reality proved that even though they were close comrades who had fought side by side for many years, old who couldn't guess Sun Lang's tricks. When Hushoshin arrived at the immortal fishing tower, he found that the door was closed and locked. He called out a few times, but no one answered. The people inside had all run away. If that was the case, it would be fine. Looking at Hu Huisho's face, which was as black as the bottom of a pot, he knew that things were not so simple. There was a large sign hanging on the door. On it, there was a line of words. "There is no film here for 300 seconds. This was the so-called confession without being pressed. Hushoshin was so angry that he laughed. He cursed loudly toward the inside. As expected, no one responded. Listening carefully, there were no whispers. He found a neighbor and asked. Only then did he find out that the pretty boy of this house had been taken away with great fanfare by a wealthy family. He asked which wealthy family it was, but he didn't know. It didn't matter if he didn't know. Hushoshin sneered. Even if it was Zhang Yinluo's father who met that bastard, he would most likely be angered to death in just half a day. Who else but Miss Zhao Feihuang from Marquis Jinggan Fu would have the guts to bring that kind of pretty boy into their household? Old Hu immediately changed directions and ran toward the Marquis of Jinggan Fu. The gatekeeper of the Marquis Fu had sharp eyes and recognized that this was a fierce person of Tianyuan Empire who was in charge of Mingzhou. How could he dare to slight him? He hurriedly went in to report and led Hushoshin to the reception pavilion to sit. Not long after, Miss Zhao Feihuang personally led the stewards of the Fu over. Miss Zhao was dressed in formal attire. When she saw Hushoshin, she directly bowed and gently said, "Greetings to Uncle." The corner of Hushoshin's eyes twitched. This Miss Zhao really didn't treat herself as an outsider. She directly considered herself to be that bastard's wife. As the saying goes, don't slap a smiling person. Moreover, even though Miss Zhao was a bit blinded by lard and took a fancy to that kind of bastard, to the extent that she directly considered herself to be his wife and called him uncle, he couldn't directly shout and wrangle. He took a deep breath and said seriously, "Miss Zhao." Zhao Feihuang's white and slender hands personally poured tea for Hushoshin and offered it with both hands. She pursed her lips and said with a smile, Uncle, don't treat me as an outsider. Just call me sister-in-law. The way this woman took advantage of him was quite compatible with Sun Lang, who Shoshin choked on his words and hummed for a while. He wasn't that thick-skinned and felt that it was a bit strange to directly call her sister-in-law. Old Who hesitated for a long time and finally came up with a clever idea. I'd better call you Miss Zhao. After all, you're not married yet. Unexpectedly, Miss Zhao's eyes lit up when she heard this. She stepped forward and said in surprise, Uncle, you're willing to be the matchmaker for me and Sun Lang? How did you get this conclusion from my evasive words just now? Miss Zhao's strange imagination and enthusiastic attitude made Old Who unable to resist. For a moment, Hu Shoshin was already in a dilemma. Although he felt that agreeing to be the matchmaker and tricking Sun Lang seemed to be a very satisfying thing, in the next moment, his rationality stopped him from seeking death. Are you kidding me? If I do this, I'll be hung naked by that guy at the South City Gate tomorrow, so he hurriedly denied it. Zhao Feihuang was disappointed and continued to plead, making it harder for Hu Shoshin to resist. After 2 or 3 rounds, Old Who had unknowingly fallen into Miss Zhao's trap. The aggressive momentum that he had when he came to find Sun Lang had unknowingly dissipated. When Hu Shoshin reacted, his spirit had been severely dampened. He didn't even have the confidence to speak. Miss Zhao, I'm here to find Sun Lang. Zhao Feihuang showed a sad and melancholy expression. She shook her head and sighed. In broad daylight, who knows where my husband is fooling around? Why would he stay at home obediently? Uncle came to ask me, but I also want to ask Uncle. The girl showed a sad expression and wiped her tears with her sleeve. Her words were full of sadness. You said that this dead man has a beautiful wife and beautiful family at home, thousands of acres of fertile land, countless land deeds, and countless gold and silver treasures. If he likes good food, there are chefs in the mansion to cook for him. If he likes music, there are unparalleled musicians in the mansion to play the zither for him. If he likes beauty, there are beautiful concubines in the mansion for him to enjoy. This little girl manages the family business and earns so much money. Isn't it all for him to enjoy and squander as he pleases? But he doesn't care about these things. He doesn't use his beautiful wife and concubines at home. Instead, he fooled around with women of unknown origin on the streets. Today, he brought back a cow spirit, and tomorrow, he brought back 2 little girls. Hu Shoshin was speechless. Mother of Asterisk, what should I say? I'm also very desperate. I don't know how to respond to this kind of words. This Miss Zhao's shamelessness is almost as shameless as Sun Lang in the past. On the other side, Miss Zhao had completely turned on her complaining wife mode. She talked endlessly about how Sun Lang didn't care about the family, how he fooled around outside all day, how he refused to live a stable life with her at home, how he refused to be a good husband who spent all day indulging in sensual pleasures, eating, drinking, gambling, and spending money like water. As a result, not only did he leave her alone in the boudoir, but he also made her hard work of managing the family business and accumulating wealth completely meaningless. Anyone who heard would be sad, and anyone who saw it would cry, as if Hu Shoshin listened to it and felt that his desire to complain was rising rapidly. He looked up at the several stewards in the flower hall. Everyone's heads were lowered, and he didn't know if it was because of shame or because they were choking. Finally, Old Who was still thinking about the business. When Miss Zhao stopped talking, he carefully interrupted. Well, Miss Zhao, you don't know where Sun Lang went? Zhao Feihuang smiled and said, My husband goes out all day to fool around. Now he's probably fooling around in some brothel. Brothel? Fooling around? Bah! Fooling around in a brothel? That's murder. Hu Shoshin rolled his eyes and asked patiently, Was he at home last night? Miss Zhao nodded and said, Of course he was at home. If he didn't go home at night, where else could he go? Old Who still didn't give up and asked, What was he doing at home last night? Miss Zhao's face turned red, and she glared at Hu Shoshin coquettishly. Uncle, you're so rude. What else could he be doing? F asterisk CK, F asterisk CK, F asterisk CK, F asterisk CK. He couldn't ask this question. He couldn't ask. Hu Shoshin suddenly stood up and cupped his hands, saying, "Since Sun Lang isn't here, I'll take my leave. Miss Zhao, sorry to disturb you. Uncle, don't be in a hurry to leave. It's rare for you to come here. If you leave now, my husband will definitely blame me for being rude when he comes back." Miss Zhao smiled and said, "Uncle, why don't you sit for a while? I'll send someone to look for my husband. When he comes back at noon, I'll personally cook a few dishes, and you two brothers can have a few drinks. Damn it, if I stay here and chat with you until noon, I'm afraid I'll lose 10 years of my life." Hu Shoshin insisted on leaving, but Zhao Feihuang tried to persuade him to stay. The two of them were in a deadlock. Suddenly, a flash of light flashed through Hu Shoshin's mind, and his expression changed abruptly. The sizzling sound of electricity rang out from old Hu's body, and the light of thunder flashed in his eyes. Seeing this, the stewards all took a step forward, but Hu Shoshin didn't even look at them. He looked deeply at Miss Zhao and said in a cold voice, "Miss Zhao, the matter of the imperial envoy. You take care of yourself." Zhao Feihuan's expression changed slightly, but she met Hu Shoshin's gaze without fear. She swept away her previous weak posture and gracefully bowed. "Since Uncle has already seen through, then I won't keep you. I'll remember Uncle's teachings in my heart. With Sun Lang here, I'm not afraid of anything." Hu Shoshin huffed coldly. His body was like lightning. With a roar of thunder, he rushed out of the flower hall and headed in the direction of Zhongyi Tower. Damn it, luring the tiger away from the mountain. Chapter 352. Hu Shoshin fiercely left with a thunderous aura. Zhao Feihuang looked outside and saw that Hu Huaishou had indeed gone far away. Only then did the girl let out a sigh of relief. The people in the reception hall looked at each other and did not make a sound. Su Qingwan sighed and waved her hand, letting the stewards of the outer manor withdraw and do what they should do. After everyone left, a head poked out from behind the screen that led to the inner hall. "That thunderous Bebe left?" Eldest young Miss Zhao's eyes instantly curved into crescent moons as she turned around and acted spoiled. "Sun Lang, was my performance just now good?" Sun Lang flipped over and sat firmly on the screen. The wooden screen supported his weight and did not sway or change shape at all. He crossed his legs and proudly nodded. "Your performance was very good. You already have 30% of this prince's power. It's enough to play around with that big stick, Hu." The girl happily spread out her arms. "Then why don't you hug me? Is it a reward?" Sun Lang rubbed his chin. "This kind of praise and reward is too heavy. It is something that your current weak body cannot bear. So this hug should be given to Steward Su." Zhao Feihuang pouted, and just as she wanted to say something, Su Qingwan had already pulled eldest young Miss Zhao into her embrace and said sternly, "Eldest young miss, is this kind of hug okay?" Young Miss Zhao struggled and shouted, "I want Sun Lang to hug me. I want Sun Lang to hug me." "Su Jiejie, when did you listen to Sun Lang's words?" Su Qingwan's face turned red, and she hugged young Miss Zhao even more tightly. "No matter who the other party is, as long as his suggestion is reasonable enough, I will humbly accept it." Young Miss Zhao struggled for a while, but still did not obtain the legal right to hug Sun Lang. After a while, she resentfully stopped, and her mouth was already pouting so much that an oil bottle could be hung from it. Sun Lang jumped down from the screen, took a look outside, and said with a laugh, "Big Stick, who hurried back. He must have pounced on empty air. Even with that melon seed brain of his, he should have figured it out. Now that we have the initiative, even if he finds out that he's been tricked, he won't dare to come out and find me. Who knows if I am in Marquis Jing'an's manor or near Zhongyi Tower." Zhao Feihuang blinked her eyes. "Sun Lang, what did you do yesterday? Hu Huaishou looks very angry." Sun Lang smiled. "Not much else. About 3 things. First, I beat the Imperial Envoy's guards and left a deep shadow in the Imperial Envoy's heart. Second, I laid an ambush for our future actions. 3, which you know, that gave old Hu enough a warning and enough to let him understand my determination, and let's make him understand my determination and my determination. From then on, he will to prevent. A. He thought for a bit and nodded. If I had to say there was something else, it would be that I introduced the concept of time, crowdfunding, to the civil servants of the empire and conveniently put the blame on the demon's head, who told that horned tiger to come find trouble with me. But these are all secondary. My main thing was that I did 3 things. I am very ashamed that I only did a little bit of work. Thank you, everyone. Unfortunately, this was a very stylish and very standard modest speech. It was the same as winking coquettishly for a blind person to see. No one could understand his joke, and no one could understand the contributions he made. A youth who lived in the new era of socialism. Even if he had wandered to another world, experienced pain, had his hands stained with blood, and his soul had suffered too much pain, he still did not forget his original intentions. No matter where he was, he would always carry out a little bit of worship with reverence. What kind of spirit and state was this? Even if he was not understood by others, even if others looked at him strangely, he would definitely not give up. Sun Lang pushed up his non-existent black-rimmed glasses and adjusted his belt that was not too high, hiding his achievements and fame. Su Qingwan looked at him as if he was crazy and said in a trembling voice, "You beat up the Imperial Envoy?" Sun Lang curled his lips. How could he be enough for me to beat up? Back then, I beat him up like a grandson. Don't worry, he's not dead, he's not dead. Housekeeper Su felt his brain trembling. And you completely wiped out the Imperial Envoy guards? Sun Lang waved his hand. How can you say that? I haven't wiped out anyone in a long time. How cruel. At most, I beat them up a few times and threw them to the side after knocking them out. As for those who have dirty mouths or don't look pleasing to the eye, I tied them up and made a small mechanism. For example, the moment they broke free from the rope, I would detonate the canned herring hanging above their heads or something. They won't die, they won't die. Su Qingwan was shocked. Do you know that you are rebelling? Sun Lang blinked. I know. Su Qingwan ran to the door vigilantly and looked around. Then she slammed the door and glared at Sun Lang, saying angrily, "If you want to die, don't drag the eldest miss into it." On the contrary, Zhao Feihuang said with a smile, "Sister Su, don't worry. When has Sun Lang ever made a mistake? Since he has promised to protect us, then we will obediently be protected by him, right?" Housekeeper Su felt his vision go dark and said helplessly, "My eldest miss, how is he protecting us? He is obviously playing," Sun Lang said angrily. "Nonsense, nonsense. Am I that kind of person?" Su Qingwan was too lazy to look at him. Sun Lang laughed dryly and said seriously, "I'm obviously combining work and interests. Since I'm doing proper business, I'm also making myself happy. So why not? Now that the Imperial Envoy has become a frightened bird, he and his friends have fled to the Ranger Guild. If they want to recover, they will have to wait for a day or two. Moreover, his people are fleeing everywhere. It will take some effort to gather them." He paced a few steps in the flower hall and said in a low voice, "As an Imperial Envoy appointed by the Emperor, his extravagance is much weaker than that of the Imperial Envoy in Luzhen. The Imperial Envoy in Luzhen has 800 black-armored elite soldiers accompanying him. He only has a few dozen big and small cats, all of whom are ugly melons and broken dates. The difference between the two periods is not only because of the structure of the Imperial Court, but also because of the nature of their work and mission. Obviously, Qin Hui's task is only a bonus compared to the important matter in Luzhen. However, an Imperial Envoy is an Imperial Envoy after all. In order to get this opportunity, he has spent a lot of effort. With his personality, this task must be very important." Sun Lang smiled. So, when he was attacked on the canal, he was thinking about how to cover it up. When he lost the Imperial Envoy team and was attacked, he must be thinking about how to cover it up. After all, if this news leaks out, the court will be angry and will investigate this matter thoroughly. However, as an Imperial Envoy, he will inevitably be judged as incompetent. Therefore, Sir Qin, who is hiding in the Zhongyi Tower, must not be thinking about complaining to the governor of Mingzhou or the general of Mingzhou. Instead, he must be holding his breath and thinking about how to do this task while under the premise of covering it up. Then there is the problem. He is not familiar with Ming Zhou, and even the Imperial Envoy team has been scattered. If he wants to do this task well, who can he count on? Zhao Feihuang's eyes lit up. Leader who? Exactly. Sun Lang curled his lips. Leader who is a retard and lacks vigilance against people. How can he be a match for someone as shrewd as Qin Hui? Right now, Sir Qin sees Hu Shouxin as his only hope. He will certainly do everything he can to make a move on him to achieve his goal. So, no matter what, Hu Shouxin will most likely be forced and unconsciously to stand on the opposite side of us. Regardless of whether it is intentional or not, he will more or less leak information to Qin Hui. So, I have to see him less and not let him know what I am thinking. This idiot acted on his own and attracted the Imperial Envoy. Now that things have become like this, I really want to give him a solid beating. Zhao Feihuang glanced at Sun Lang and seemed to see the unhappiness and even sadness hidden under his leisurely appearance. In a quiet voice, he said, Sun Lang. Sun Lang was only absent-minded for a moment before coming back to his senses. He smiled and said, Don't worry. Just treat it as playing a game of sand table deduction with Leader Hu and Qin Youqiao that we haven't played in a long time. Let's see if they have made any progress. Su Qingwan hesitated for a moment and then said in a low voice, The Imperial Envoy and Leader Hu are both people you know, right? Why don't you directly explain the matter and discuss a suitable solution together? Why don't you see them as enemies? Sun Lang's gaze was serene as he said lightly, Because my trust is not that cheap. Furthermore, I have a faint premonition that things are not so simple. Qin Hui's predetermined position, his true purpose in coming to Mingzhou, and whether or not Qin Hui is of the same mind as old Hu, I have my suspicions about all of these. Only an idiot like Hu Shouxin would foolishly believe every so-called old friend and comrade. He has never experienced the taste of betrayal and doesn't know how deceitful the human heart is. The so-called comrade-in-arms who entrust their lives to each other, the so-called friendship that bathes in blood on the battlefield. These false friendships and illusions are only reliable because they are built on the same position. He is too naive. He shook his head and smiled. But I am much smarter than him. I instinctively suspected Qin Hui and suspected that he had other plans. Originally, according to my plan, I would have captured Qin Hui on the canal and tortured him to force out his true intentions. But I was still not sure. If I wronged him, first, it would be unfair to him. Second, it would hurt old Hu's face and friendship. Third, if something happened to the Imperial Envoy, it would also affect you. That's about it. Speaking to this point, he saw that the atmosphere was somewhat heavy and spread out his hands. All right, that's why, don't worry. Everything is under my control. Right now, the initiative is in our hands. I've already dug a hole for Qin Hui. I don't care who ordered him to come here or what kind of result he wants. I want him to pinch his nose and admit that Marquis Jinggan Fu is innocent and completely settle the matter of the demon weapon. He faced the two girls and smiled slightly. Leave it to me. Zhao Feihuang froze for a moment and then smiled. She nodded vigorously. I have always believed in Sun Lang. Su Qingwan also hesitated for a moment. She let out a long sigh and slowly said, No matter what the result is, no matter what happens, please promise me that you will at least protect eldest young miss. Sun Lang smiled. I already said, don't worry. You still don't believe me? Su Qingwan put on a stern face. I'm not as innocent and unaffected as eldest young miss. If you want me to trust you wholeheartedly, then you have to prove it to me first. Sun Lang shrugged and turned to walk inside. I've been busy the whole day. I will go and rest first to relieve the fatigue in my body and mind. Young Miss Zhao was first stunned and then suddenly came to her senses. She chased after him and ran inside, shouting loudly, Sun Lang, you can't be like this. How can there be a husband who throws away his wife to find a concubine? Immediately, an angry roar came from inside. Who is a concubine? You're a concubine. Your whole family is a concubine. Zhao Feihuang snorted. Then why are you hiding outside? Could it be that after you heard that Sun Lang had returned, You eagerly ran over to curry favor with him. You like to seek favor so much if you're not a concubine. Then what are you? You. Shameless, shameless. And Sun Lang. What are you laughing at? Oomph. Not coming back for the whole night. Why don't you die outside? Oomph. Just as Marquis Jingon's residence was immersed in a joyous and harmonious atmosphere, Shoshin rushed all the way back to the Ranger Guild. He directly went up to the second floor and heard a familiar voice coming from inside. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. He thought that he had fallen for Sun Lang's plan of luring the tiger away from the mountain. This fellow had calculated his movements and first lured him to the immortal fishing tower, then lured him to Marquis Jingon's residence. Then he instigated young Miss Zhao to stall for time and trap him in the Marquis residence so that he could rush into Zhongyi Tower and torment poor honorable Brother Qin. He thought that Sun Lang had thought of this vicious plan, but he didn't expect that after returning to Zhongyi Tower, he would discover that Sun Lang and Qin were safe and sound. Sun Lang didn't seem to have come here at all. Old Hu first heaved a sigh of relief. Then he secretly felt ashamed. With this fellow's ability, if he wanted to take care of honorable Brother Qin, then honorable Brother Qin would have died dozens of times on the road. Why did he have to wait until here to make a move? Then he laughed bitterly. I'm afraid that my current actions are also within his calculations. What does this count as? Declaring the initiative? Warning? Or launching a psychological attack on me? Before engaging in battle, he first used all kinds of methods to establish and declare the advantage, creating psychological pressure on the enemy. His style of using troops is still so unreasonable, and does this count as announcing the beginning of the war? A trace of sadness flashed through his eyes. Sun Lang. Oh, Sun Lang, why on earth did you guard against your former comrade in every way possible? Although Qin Hui was a civil servant, she was also a friend of yours who had killed many people in the past. Old Hu was disappointed in his heart, but the door in front of him suddenly opened, and Qin Hui walked out in surprise. She cupped her hands and said, Brother, you're back. Did you find anything? Hu Shoshin forced a smile and said, When I was looking outside, I suddenly remembered that if this was a trick to lure the tiger away from the mountain, wouldn't honorable brother be in danger? So I came back to see if you're okay. I left in a hurry earlier. Tonight, let's have a good drink and then discuss what to do about His Majesty's matter. Qin Hui's face lit up, and she said with a smile, I should go and visit sister-in-law. Old Hu waved his hand and said, Alas, you came a bad time. My wife is about to give birth, and I'm useless as a rough man. Just in case, I'll send her back to her parents' home to wait for delivery. It'll be safer. When this matter is settled, I'll take you there. A strange light flashed through Qin Hui's eyes, but it was quickly concealed. He laughed heartily and said, That's good too. Tonight, we brothers will drink and chat merrily. We won't go home until we're drunk. Chapter 353. This day passed peacefully. Sun Lang made big news for one day and one night, and had a good time with it. His mind was relaxed, and his spirit was refreshed. He sat in Marquis Jingon Fu and planned before acting. He directed the people of the Marquis Fu to set up one vicious scheme after another, and arranged one script after another, specifically waiting for the pitiful imperial envoy to take the bait. The viciousness of his schemes and his sinister intentions greatly broadened young Miss Zhao's horizons and made housekeeper Su sweat. As for the victims of the big pubic hair, they were still clueless about the tragic situation that was about to happen. Qin Darren had just escaped from the jaws of the tiger and sought shelter at Zhongyi Tower. He rested for a few hours, and the fear and embarrassment of being chased for an entire night finally eased. In the afternoon, the second piece of good news came. The Imperial Envoy guards that had been separated from the night before had arrived in Mingzhou in 2s and 3s. They had been received by the Rangers who had been sent out to Zhongyi Tower. The Central Inspection Team was finally reunited. After they met, there was another round of speechlessness. That night, a banquet was set up in Zhongyi Tower to welcome the Imperial Envoys and their group and to calm their nerves. At the banquet, with Hu Shoshin as the representative, the retired military personnel, and the Central Inspection Team reached a consensus with the Central Inspection Team. They expressed great condemnation and indignation toward the attack on the Imperial Envoy Guards that had occurred near Wuxingfu. They believed that this was a great provocation by an international reactionary force against the Ho-Tu Empire, and that they were bound to suffer the violent blows of our imperialism. When it came to the sad part of last night, the crowd was filled with indignation. For some reason, General Hu Shoshin's indignation was even greater than that of the victims of the Imperial Envoy Guards. This fierce general of Tianyuan slammed the table and stood up to denounce Chen Xi. He scolded the evil monster that attacked the Imperial Envoy Guards with a torrent of abuse. He looked like he wanted to eat the monster's flesh raw. This moved everyone, and they actually went to persuade General Hu not to get angry over the monster and so on. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 flavors of food, the frightened Imperial Envoy Guards finally washed away the terror of the night. Some were drunk, and some were passed out. They were supported by the rangers to the guest rooms to rest. Hu Shoshin burped and came to the courtyard. He leaned against the railing of the pavilion to enjoy the breeze. Footsteps sounded beside him. Qin Hui also stumbled over and said with a smile, "Great, great. Drinking with old friends is still great." Hu Shoshin chuckled and patted the bench beside him, indicating for Qin Hui to sit down. Qin Hui was so drunk that she almost sat on old Hu. Hu Shoshin pushed her, and she almost fell to the ground. He chuckled and climbed up the stone bench. He glanced at old Hu and said vaguely, "Brother, I'm fine with it. But you're so drunk. Aren't you afraid that your wife will be angry when you go home tonight?" Hu Shoshin waved his hand and mumbled, "Brother, you're drunk. Didn't I say it before? I've already returned to my mother's home to await delivery. I can drink as much as I want." The corners of Qin Hui's mouth curled up slightly. Then, as if nothing had happened, he laughed loudly and said, "So that's how it is, so that's how it is. I was muddle-headed, brother. It's been a few years since we drank like this." Hu Shoshin changed into a more comfortable position and leaned against the railing. A look of reminiscence flashed through his drunk eyes. He slowly said, "Yes, 2 years ago, the war ended. We returned to the capital to be rewarded. There was a banquet in the royal palace that lasted for 100 days. Everyone celebrated and congratulated. That should have been the last time we brothers gathered together. From then on, we went our separate ways." Qin Hui also nodded and said, "Yes, now that I think about it, the grand occasion at that time is still in front of me. The civil and military factions of the imperial court, the various factions of the 6 armies, the Central Imperial Capital and the 9 States Army, the generals and the martial arts masters in the army, the poor martial artists and the children of aristocratic families. Everyone threw away their prejudices and defenses against each other. The disagreements and frictions of the past no longer existed. No matter what background they had, no matter what grudges they had before, everyone was smiling and celebrating the hard-won victory," Hu Shoshin faintly said. "But the warriors who returned were successful and famous. They brought glory to their families. They were given land and lands, and they rose to the top of the world. Those who didn't return could only die on the battlefield. They were rewarded to their ancestors and their descendants. After decades of bloody battles, decades of pain, years of separation, and hundreds of battles, there was finally a result. Finally, there was hope. But some people would never see it. They couldn't see it." Qin Hui sighed and patted the railing. She said with a sigh, "Brother, you didn't rise to the sky. Back then, I thought that with your military achievements, you could fight for the position of the general of Mingzhou, or at least become the chief of the armed forces of prefecture. I didn't expect you to insist on taking off your armor and returning to Mingzhou to become a wanderer. With your military achievements and martial arts skills, it's really a pity. After all, almost all the people who were close to the marshal back then received special treatment." "You." Hu Shoshin's body trembled, and a sharp light flashed in his drunken eyes. He said in a low voice, "Shut up." Qin Hui was frightened by a shout at first, but then she smiled bitterly and shook her head. "Alas, I won't mention it, I won't mention it. Actually, I didn't understand what you did 2 years ago, but now I understand that it was a brave retreat. 2 years ago, I thought that since the sky demon had retreated, our efforts and sacrifices had paid off. The next step would be to revitalize the country, benefit the people, and return the world to a bright and peaceful place. Who knew that the sky demon had been defeated, and a more difficult battle had yet to come? He counted with his fingers drunkenly. The sky demon in the extraterritorial region has been reduced to ashes. The strong external enemies have been defeated, but internal disputes have arisen. The proud soldiers of Tianyuan have been stationed in various places, and it's hard to control them. There are constant conflicts with the local government, and the imperial court is also in a difficult position. This is a battle. Guarding the world has become ruling the world, and the civil and military officials are fighting again. The civil officials want more power and more control over the military officials. This is another battle. The external enemies have been defeated. His Majesty is old, and the position of the crown prince is still up in the air. A new emperor brings new officials, and this is related to the prosperity and wealth of the next few decades. The princes are fighting, and we have no choice but to choose a side. This is another battle. Although His Majesty is old, the emperor is still the emperor. He has the power to kill and control the supreme power in the world. He won't allow anyone to threaten him, and he won't allow anyone to ignore him. The War of Tianyuan has caused the local warlords to become too powerful. He wants to centralize power in the central government and achieve the goal of eliminating the weak branches. At the same time, he wants to maintain power in the local areas to deal with the threats and covetous eyes of the other four powerful countries. The best way is to provoke the various factions in the imperial court to fight and wear each other down. This is the emperor's strategy and the supreme magic weapon of the past generations. This battle was instigated by His Majesty. Since we are Han officials, if the emperor wants us to die, we have no choice but to die, let alone this. Speaking of this, Qin Hui sighed heavily. I can't help it. In this glorious and huge country, although people like me have a reputation in the imperial court, I'm just a pawn who can't help it. I'm involved in it, and I can't free myself. In the past 2 years, I've knelt, begged, even cried, scolded, and surrendered. I've lost far more than when I was in the war. Perhaps it was because of the wine, or the pressure and grievances accumulated over the past 2 years that could not be relieved, or perhaps the people around her were trustworthy old friends who had nothing to do with his official career. Speaking of this, Qin Hui actually burst into tears. He tightly grasped Hu Shoshin's arm, gritted his teeth, and cried, "Brother, tell me, why have I been more tired in the past 2 years than when I was in the war? If I died on the battlefield, under the butcher's knife of the sky demon, I could still be posthumously awarded the title of Jie Lang. My father and brother could be taken care of, my wife could be given the title of lady, and my son could be given the title of nobility. Why is it that after I fought for my life on the battlefield and came back with the title of an official and received rewards, I've become more and more sullen these years?" Hu Shoshin patted Qin Hui's arm and said drunkenly, "Brother, brother, this is the way of the world. There's no way around it. 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 There's no way around it." But after hearing this, Qin Hui seemed to be fiercely provoked. He shook off Hu Shoshin's hand and shouted, as if venting his anger, "Struggle to get out? I'm not as carefree as my brother. I still have the glory of my family, my father's expectations, my wife and children to take care of, and I have ambitions to achieve. Struggle to get out? Why do I have to struggle to get out? Be bullied? I'm an indomitable person, and I'm a diligent official. Why do I have to be bullied? I just don't understand. Why do I have to be restrained like this when I'm working hard? I want to be a good official, but why do I have to be mocked like this? Just because I'm a civil official? Just because I don't have anyone above me? Just because I'm stubborn? Just because... His eyes were red. He roared. Just because the marshal strangely hated me back then? With a slap, he had already received a solid slap across the face. He was slapped to the ground by Hu Shoshin. Old Hu glared at him and said coldly, "The marshal doesn't like you, but he has never wronged you. When you have military service, he has never hidden anything from you. When you have rewards, he hasn't taken anything from you. When you were deeply surrounded, it was he who saved you. When you offended an ally, it was he who settled it for you. Without him, you would have died on the battlefield long ago. Or, because you offended someone, you would have been exiled to a remote mountain for the rest of your life. How could you have the glory of being an imperial envoy today? Before you speak or do anything, you have to touch your conscience. From beginning to end, he has never wronged us. To you and me, there is only kindness. You can complain, but don't be an ingrate. Qin Hui was slapped to the ground. He didn't know if it was because he was too drunk or because Old Hu had hit him too hard, but he struggled on the ground a few times and couldn't get up. He covered his face and sobbed. Snot and tears smeared across his face. Where was the bearing of an imperial envoy? He curled up on the ground, as weak as a child. He muttered, "Yes, he has never wronged me. Even if he hated me, he didn't take anything from me. He didn't purposely make things difficult for me. Working under him, even if he didn't like me and didn't like me, as long as I did things well, as long as I was honest and diligent, I would always receive the rewards and praise I deserved. But, who told him to die?" Hu Shoshin's body trembled. He pounded the ground and cried loudly. Who told him to die? Before I do anything now, I have to consider the intentions of my superiors and the feelings of my colleagues. I can't show my edge and make my superiors feel that I'm a threat. I can't take all the credit and make my colleagues feel that I don't know how to conduct myself. I have a lot of energy, but I can only put 30% of it into practical matters. Before I speak, I have to think it over 3 times in my heart to avoid offending people and making enemies out of nothing. I'm a man of indomitable spirit, yet I have to learn how to curry favor. I have to learn how to curry favor with others. I studied hard as a child and was filled with ambition. The talent I gained through fighting on the battlefield can only be displayed through currying favor, and even bribery. I've worked hard for so many years to serve the country and benefit the people, yet I have to first be a dog. Hu Shoshin looked at Qin Hui, who had fallen to the ground and lost control of himself. His heart softened and he bent down to help him up. However, Qin Hui ignored him and sobbed. If that's all, accept it. This is the way of the world. The ups and downs of officialdom have always been like this. If you want to display your ambition, you have to make sacrifices first. These 2 years, I've been trembling with fear in the imperial court. I've worked hard. I've racked my brains and tried to figure out the intentions of my superiors. I relied on the connections I've made in these 2 years to obtain the position of imperial envoy. Back in the day, he, Xiong was a barbarian servant who didn't care for the common people and treated farmers like livestock. In the end, he had his legs broken by the marshal. In the end, he led 800 Xianjia soldiers and stayed in Lu Town as an imperial envoy, while I could only lead a few dozen people to Mingzhou with my tail between my legs. I also accept it. I'm also carrying an imperial order. I just want to do my job well. At this point, the fear and injustice from last night finally exploded. He cried loudly, but why? Why did the monster also come to make things difficult for me? I've always been careful and never used my power to bully others. Why did the monster also humiliate me? I curried favor with my superiors, curried favor with my colleagues, endured the military officials' disdain, and received cold treatment. I racked my brains to obtain the emperor's position. How can I be so unlucky? How can I even run into a monster when I'm just doing my job? Elder brother, tell me, why is my life so hard? Why should I have such a hard life? Tell me. He raised his body and grabbed Hu Shoshin's robe. He cried, "Tell me, what if I messed up this job? Even if His Majesty is magnanimous and doesn't punish me, I'm afraid there's no hope for me in this life. If anything happens in the future, it won't be my turn. Because I didn't do my job well, because I'll have to carry the title of incompetent for the rest of my life." Hu Shoshin bent down to help Qin Hui up. He hugged his friend who was crying like a child and slowly said, "Brother, don't be afraid. This job will be done beautifully. I promise you, I won't ruin your future." Hearing this, Qin Hui stared drunkenly. Elder brother, are you serious? Hu Shoshin smiled. When have I ever gone back on my words? Rest for a while. After tomorrow, we'll discuss a plan and bring you to Marquis Jingon Fu. Qin Hui still wanted to ask, but the alcohol rushed up and he couldn't speak. He was supported by Hu Shoshin to the second floor. He drank some hangover soup and then laid down on the bed to sleep. Hu Shoshin blew out the lamp and left the room. He closed the door. There was still some drunkenness in his eyes, but he looked completely sober. He turned back to look at the room and took a deep breath. Sun Lang, you can't run amok this time. I definitely won't let you run amok this time. Inside a room, hearing Hu Shoshin's footsteps gradually fade away, Qin Hui, who was lying on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. In that pair of sparkling eyes, where was the slightest hint of drunkenness? In that face that had been crying and throwing a tantrum with tears and snot smeared all over was no longer as disheveled as before. It became very serious. Finally, he took the bait. Chapter 354. In the past few days, Hu Shoshin had sent his wife and daughter back to their parents' home. The house was empty and cold. There wasn't much meaning in going back to sleep, so he directly rested in the Zhongyi building. Early the next morning, Old, who had just woken up while rubbing his sleepy eyes when he heard a series of urgent knocks on the door. He put on his shoes and opened the door to take a look. He saw Qin Hui standing in front of the door with a face full of shame and embarrassment. He bowed deeply. Elder brother, I am ignorant. After I got drunk last night, I spoke nonsense and offended elder brother. It is truly, I am ashamed. Hu Shoshin was startled at first. Then he smiled and patted Qin Hui's shoulder. You and I are brothers. Don't bring up the same things you did in court. You being able to speak with me from the bottom of your heart is because you think highly of me. I can't even be happier, so why would I blame you? I didn't think that in these 2 years, the situation in court would be so complicated. Although I often keep in contact with my old friends through letters, it is very difficult to understand the situation through letters. Qin Hui only said that he was ashamed, as if he was very apologetic for the slip of the tongue last night. Only when Hu Shoshin looked like he was about to get angry did he let it go. The two of them went downstairs hand in hand and ate breakfast. The Imperial envoy guards that had rested in the Zhongyi building last night also woke up one after another. They came to pay their respects and eat together. During the meal, Qin Hui suddenly said, I encountered a disaster. Fortunately, elder brother protected me. Right now, in the Grand Mingzhou, there are many soldiers, generals, and experts as common as clouds. A little demon, I don't think it would dare to act wildly. I have an imperial order and don't dare to delay. Today, I will go to Marquis Jingon Fu to issue an imperial edict to investigate. What do you think? Hearing this, Hu Shoshin wiped his mouth. Mingzhou is the northern border of the empire. During wartime, it is the front line to defend against the sky demon. After the war, it is also responsible for monitoring the strong neighbors of the country of fire. Thus, Mingzhou's General Qi's Yamen is not in Mingzhou, but in Hongyang, further north. For this mission, the power you can borrow from Tianyuan is limited. However, you have an imperial order and come from a family of civil officials. Do you want to go see the provincial governor and say hello to make things more convenient? Qin Hui smiled and said, I have elder brother's full promise. What other convenience do I need? Hu Shoshin also laughed. It seemed that the conversation after the hangover last night had actually shortened the distance between the two men. After laughing for a while, Qin Hui said seriously, I'm not joking. The imperial court doesn't want to make a big fuss about this. They didn't even alert the Mingzhou government when they sent the edict. After all, Marquis Jingon Fu is considered a loyal family, and Miss Zhao of Marquis Jingon Fu is listed in the women's register and can be considered a heroine among women. If this matter is blown up, the impact will not be small, so before we find concrete evidence, we cannot cause too much of a commotion. Hearing this, a trace of joy flashed through Hu Shoshin's eyes, and he nodded, saying, So it's like this. That's also good. If worthy brother is in a hurry, after eating, I will accompany worthy brother on a trip to investigate that Marquis Jingon Fu. What Mr. Who didn't expect was that Qin Hui, who had been secretly observing him, was keenly aware of the flash of joy in his eyes. Qin Hui sneered inwardly, but on the surface, he cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, elder brother. I'm not familiar with Ming province, so I'll have to rely on you." Hu Shouxin waved his hand. "You and I are brothers, so there's no need to thank me. Everything is good except that you're too polite. There are so many trivial matters in the imperial court." Breakfast ended in a joyous atmosphere. After a night of rest, the imperial envoy guards that had been through a lot regrouped and roused their spirits, preparing to begin their trip to Ming province to eat and drink at public expense. The group set out in a grandiose manner, heading in the direction of Marquis Jinggan Fu. Hu Shouxin followed them, and on the way, he casually asked, "Where does brother plan to start investigating? What do you want to do with this matter?" "It's here." Qin Hui sneered inwardly and then said in a low voice, "Elder brother is not an outsider, so I won't hide it. The matter of the demonic implement is a dead end. The imperial court's laws are here. Even if they are descendants of loyal martyrs, they cannot act recklessly. If little brother finds out that this matter is true, then I will have to report it to the imperial court. Then His Majesty and the other officials will decide how to deal with it. If Marquis Jinggan Fu is completely innocent, then little brother has an imperial edict here to reward you, adding a generous reward to appease you." Hu Shouxin's brows furrowed slightly, but he still nodded repeatedly. "It should be like this, it should be like this," Qin Hui said without any change in expression. "This matter still needs to rely on elder brother. Little brother is in the imperial capital and does not have any understanding of this Marquis Jinggan Fu. I only know that they are descendants of loyal martyrs, and their family is completely supported by eldest young Miss Zhao, a woman, yet they were able to manage it so well and not lose out to us men. But for some reason, they actually got involved with the demonic implement. Elder brother, you're a citizen of Mingzhou and also the person in charge of the affairs of a province. Based on your understanding of young Miss Zhao, would she be able to do this kind of thing?" Old Hu instantly remembered the loss he suffered in this Marquis Jinggan Fu yesterday. "I don't know about this young Miss Zhao's previous personality and temper. I only know that after she met Sun Lang, her entire person took large strides in the direction of eccentricity and craftiness. Her ability to lie with a straight face, take advantage of others and lie without thinking is already catching up to Sun Lang in the past. He thought this in his heart, but he definitely could not say it out loud, so he could only rub his head and say with a dry laugh, young Miss Zhao's reputation in Mingzhou is very good. Everyone knows that it was not easy for her to support the entire Marquis Fu by herself. She should be an outstanding girl. As for the rest, I don't know too much. Everything should be left to worthy younger brother to investigate and make a decision. Don't let this foolish older brother's words affect your judgment. From your expression and actions just now, you definitely know that Zhao Fei Huang, yet you still have the face to say you don't know too much. You should at least act a bit more realistically. Keep pretending Qin Hui sneered endlessly in her heart, but the smile on her face became even more enthusiastic. She praised, "Elder brother is an upright person. With your words, I can rest assured." Hu Shouxin could only nod his head, but he was somewhat worried in his heart. Worthy younger brother Qin came on the orders of the court. He was upright and plain-spoken, open and candid. He definitely had to investigate this matter to the bottom. The truth was that young Miss Zhao had secretly hidden a demonic implement, but young Miss Zhao was not the main instigator of this matter. If he followed the vine to the melon, it would implicate an even bigger and more dangerous fish. Based on his personality, he definitely had to get to the bottom of this matter and expose the truth to the world. But if he really did expose this matter, needless to say, the court would be shaken. He was afraid that even he himself would suffer countless attacks and even be plotted against. He thought that someone who could discuss things had come, but who would have thought? Moreover, Sun Lang was still watching covetously. This time, going to Marquis Jinggan Fu, who knew what kind of vicious scheme that little bastard had arranged. He was not someone who spoke of law or reason. If worthy younger brother Qin insisted on touching young Miss Zhao, perhaps he really would casually take worthy younger brother Qin's head. Once the imperial envoy died, this matter would really blow out of control. Old Hu's thoughts were complicated, and in the end, he sighed. I hope that Sun Lang and young Miss Zhao had already made preparations and could deal with worthy younger brother Qin and let this matter pass peacefully. Otherwise, I can only lay my cards on the table with worthy younger brother Qin and tell him the truth. I don't know if he would listen to me and stop here with his personality. Qin Hui had been watching coldly from the sidelines the entire time. She noticed Hu Shouxin's hesitant and complicated expression and sneered in her heart. Don't rush, don't rush. Slowly reveal your foxtail. The group of people arrived at Marquis Jinggan Fu. When the gatekeeper saw Hu Shouxin, who had left in a rage yesterday, leading a group of people over, he thought that Hu Shouxin had brought a group of rangers to cause trouble. He was shocked and was about to run inside to report, but when the imperial envoy Wan Yuanzhong stepped forward to reveal his identity, this gatekeeper's expression changed from shock to fear. The gaze he looked at Hu Shouxin with was filled with anger and confusion. Even if the Marquis Fu offended you yesterday, was it necessary for you to go complain to the court when you returned and bring the imperial envoy over to judge today? But once the news reached the Marquis Fu, eldest young Miss Zhao and the housekeeper's expressions changed slightly. They looked at each other in dismay, their faces filled with unease, worry, and fear. They knew what this imperial envoy had come for. Even if they had already made all the preparations beforehand, at this moment, they would still feel uneasy. The housekeepers all turned to look at young Miss Zhao, but Zhao Feihuang turned her gaze to the other side. The person over there was her support, the source of her confidence, and the reason why she did not lose her head out of fear. Sun Lang raised his eyes. Big Stick, who also came over? A housekeeper from the outer Fu respectfully replied. Yes, the gatekeeper saw clearly. The one accompanying the imperial envoy was indeed Master Hu. Sun Lang snorted. This idiot was most likely coaxed and deceived by Qin Hui. Even after being sold, he still helped her count the money. Most likely it was Qin Youqiao who said some of her so-called heartfelt words and then cried loudly, making herself look a bit wretched. This fellow's heart softened, and he completely believed it. Mother, he really is easy to coax. His words did not reach the main point. Su Qingwan anxiously said, in other words, Master Hu is all ready. Then what do we do? Sun Lang smiled confidently. What are you afraid of? Big Stick, whose brain is not good. Even if he defected to the enemy, it's useless. Moreover, he slapped the table. You guys, you have to remember one thing. If you have not done anything wrong in your life, you don't have to be afraid of ghosts knocking on your door in the middle of the night. This Marquis Jinggan Fu has always known their place and abided by the law. They have never bullied the common people and also did not resort to trickery. They are the outstanding landlords and noble families of the imperialists with a conscience. The matter of the so-called demonic weapon is even more false. It was purely a scheme by a vile person. You guys only need to firmly believe in this point, and your heart will naturally have an awe-inspiring righteousness. You will not be invaded by external evil and will not be approached by evil. Don't even mention a little imperial envoy. Even if the emperor personally tried this case, innocent is innocent, did not do it is not done. After all, the country's laws are here. Moreover, the Marquis Jinggan Fu is full of loyal people, loyal to the country. Above them, they are worthy of being the common people. In the middle, they are worthy of being the monarch and the country. Below them, they are worthy of being their ancestors. The sun is bright and the earth is clear. How could the imperial court accuse the loyal? Isn't that right? These words were very provocative and also grounded in reality. It aroused the housekeeper's sense of honor and pride as members of the Marquis Jinggan Fu, making them feel emboldened, and their state of mind was greatly reassured. Moreover, these people's ranks were not high enough. Previously, they had also been induced and hinted by young Lady Zhao's spiritual power. Naturally, they firmly believed that the Marquis Fu was completely innocent. Hearing these words, they roused their spirits and agreed in unison. Their gazes towards Sun Lang were filled with goodwill and affirmation. These words were really of standard. He was indeed the husband that eldest young lady had chosen but these external housekeepers did not know the truth. As an accomplice, Su Qingwan was very clear about the truth of this matter. She could not help but reveal a subtle expression, because she discovered that when Sun Lang was speaking, there was an awe-inspiring righteousness between his brows, and his bearing could be said to be upright and upright. One could not tell that he was completely speaking nonsense at all. This fellow, he wouldn't have also deceived himself, right? Housekeeper Su, who still had a bit of conscience in his heart, and whose personality was inclined towards simple and honest, expressed that he could not accept this subtle development. After all, what was true, and what was false. The Marquis Fu had indeed collected demonic weapons and was almost implicated by the demonic weapons. We have a guilty conscience. How can we have a clear conscience? Me too. Eldest young lady also. Thinking like this, Su Qingwan turned her worried gaze towards young lady Zhao. Young lady Zhao's eyes glowed with vigor, and her gaze towards Sun Lang was filled with adoration and love. The girl waved her small fists, her eyes brimming with emotion and excitement, loudly saying, "Sun Lang, I know. Our Marquis Jinggan Fu is upright, indomitable. Even if there are villains who falsely accuse us, they will not be able to distort the truth. I believe that this bright and clear universe will not sit idly by and watch a loyal and upright person face disaster. I believe that the court will definitely give the Marquis Fu a fair verdict." Eldest young lady Ya, how could you also believe it? In the midst of Su Qingwan's confusion, young lady Zhao seemed to have found the courage to face the imperial envoy directly. She clenched her fists tightly and encouraged herself. She took a deep breath. "All right, go out and welcome them." Sun Lang smiled. "Keep a calm heart and act freely. Don't be afraid and don't show your cowardice. This matter is settled." Young lady Zhao looked over pitifully. "Sun Lang is not going to accompany me." Sun Lang laughed in spite of himself. "If I go out and get seen by Qin Youqiao, I'm afraid that he would faint on the spot, and there would be no need to investigate this case. For this battle, I want to hide in the shadows. If I don't show myself, it's the same as holding the initiative. It's enough to make Big Stick who be on tenterhooks and hold back from shooting at the rat for fear of breaking the vases. Moreover, if I show myself, how can the grand show that the imperial envoy has arranged be carried out?" Su Qingwan thought of the battle plan that Sun Lang spoke of last night, and a look of unbearable pity appeared in her eyes. Previously, she had indeed done many things against her conscience for eldest young lady Zhao, but this kind of excessive thing was Tisai. After all, eldest young lady's safety was the most important. She made up her mind and looked deeply at Sun Lang before following the reluctant young lady Zhao out of the hall. Under the escort of the various stewards, the group of people walked majestically toward the flower pavilion, preparing to welcome the imperial envoy. Sun Lang looked at their departing figures, and his gaze became serene. He said in a low voice, Qin Hui, a few years ago, I believe that your intentions were not right. However, at that time, I was stupid and needed evidence for everything. Without evidence, no matter how much of an eyesore you were, I would not casually touch you. You can be considered smart. You sense my wariness and hostility towards you, so you always acted with your tail between your legs. As a result, I have never been able to catch your little tail. He smiled and walked out of the room. But what about this time? This time, you won't be on guard against someone who has already died. Let me see what exactly you want to do. Chapter 355. Regarding the matter of the Marquis of Jinggan Fu, the court's intention was to carry it out in secret and not make a big deal out of it and create unnecessary disturbances. In other words, if the Marquis of Jinggan Fu was really suspected of smuggling magic weapons, then they would report it to the court and handle it according to the laws of the court. But if they were completely innocent, then another imperial edict would take effect. It would be nothing more than a reward to appease them, a reward to suppress their shock, and so on. After all, this matter could be said to be big or small, but the problem was that no matter if it was the person investigating the case or the person being investigated, both sides had their own thoughts and considerations. Under this kind of situation, the imperial envoy and the person in charge of the Marquis of Jingon Fu formally met. According to Sun Lang's intention, they should hang a banner in front of the main hall that said, "Welcome to the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection's leader for inspection and guidance," and so on. The large and small officials and staff of the Fu would line up to welcome them. Then they would call the reporters from those lousy newspapers in the city to watch from the side. In this atmosphere brimming with enthusiasm, the leaders of the two sides warmly shook hands and exchanged some pleasantries. Afterwards, everyone would take their seats and exchange opinions on the central government's instructions and research decisions. After saying some fake and empty words, when the sky darkened, it was time to do some minor work. There is no harm in going to the largest office in the city, the Moonflower Pavilion, and booking the largest private room, ordering 3 to 5 red cards, ordering vegetables and fruits of the 4 seasons, exotic delicacies, and after eating and drinking to their heart's content, they could talk to the leader about the difficulties of their work. When they left, they couldn't forget to give the leader a few heavenly shopping cards for the 72 imperial shops and 108 imperial merchants. Afterwards, they could go home and sleep, leaving the imperial envoy who was worried about the country to stay in the Moonflower Pavilion to work through the night. When the sun rose, this matter would more or less be settled. However, before the rational housekeeper Su could raise any objections, this idea was rejected by Sun Lang himself. This kind of method that was completely without any smoke and fire, lifting the heavy as if it were light as an antelope's horn, was probably one of a kind in the entire kingdom. If Qin Darren saw the strange but strangely familiar banner that said, "Welcome to the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection's leader for inspection and guidance," after he understood, his heart would first go into shock for 3 seconds. He had made a fortune in secret. He had made a fortune in secret. The surprise would only be revealed at the very last moment. Before that, he had to hide his identity and his whereabouts. Sun Lang thought this. He then placed the giant metal object that he had ordered the craftsman in the manor to make overnight on his head. He then grabbed a large piece of metal that was leaning against the foot of the wall and slung it over his shoulder to loosen his muscles. With his other hand on his waist, he swaggered through the small door of the side courtyard. Not far to his left, there was a group of people kneeling grandly, listening to the imperial envoy read out the imperial edict. At this time, Qin Hui had already changed into the uniform of an imperial envoy and was surrounded by the imperial envoy guards. Compared to yesterday, she looked much more pretentious. Sun Lang adjusted the giant helmet on his head and glanced through a small slit in it. They hadn't seen each other for a few years, but this old friend hadn't changed much. She was still that refined and courteous, still that gentle and heavy, still that fake. What was that saying again? When you're gazing at Shenzhen, Shenzhen is also gazing at you. Mr. Qin was holding the imperial edict, his voice clear and melodious as he announced the imperial edict. Perhaps only now did he truly understand how heavy, how majestic, and how powerful the imperial edict was. It was above everyone's head, and all the power of this great country maintained its majesty and righteousness. With just one imperial edict and a gold medallion, even if it was a 1,000-year-old aristocratic family, a dragon among men, a general who commanded tens of millions of soldiers, or an arrogant minister, they would all be forced to lower their arrogant heads. Even if the person reading the imperial edict or holding the gold medallion was only a lowly beggar, it would still be the same. This was imperial power. It's what could allow a lowly and weak person to instantly have power and influence that could surpass the world. It was truly wonderful. Qin Hui sighed in her heart and then immediately gathered her thoughts. This power was powerful but ethereal. Whether it existed or not depended on the emperor's will. Only with true power could one not be moved by external things. That was what she wanted. This was the first time he was announcing the imperial edict. He had rehearsed it many times in advance. He had prepared emergency plans for all the unexpected situations. All the steps, the changes in tone, the speed of the speech, everything was clear in his heart. However, even if the poor Serene had calculated everything, he would never have thought that at this solemn moment, when everyone was kneeling and listening to the imperial edict, and the entire manor was bowing their heads, there would be a strange man with a bare upper body, wearing a huge triangular helmet that almost covered his upper body, and carrying a large iron blade, silently and arrogantly passing through the small courtyard next to them. Now that the weather had turned cold, the green bamboo planted in the side courtyard rustled as the wind blew. In this silent atmosphere, a person dressed so strangely and even strangely slowly moved added a sense of mystery to the scene. In his shock, Serene almost bit his tongue. This kind of sudden situation was completely out of Qin Hui's expectations. Even with Serene's mental strength and eloquence, he couldn't help but stutter. He cried out involuntarily, "Who are you?" With these words, everyone listening to the imperial edict raised their heads in unison and followed the imperial envoy's gaze. They saw that the small courtyard was serene, and the sound of the bamboo forest was quiet and cold. Where's the shadow of a person? Qin Hui pointed in the direction of the small courtyard. There was a person holding a weapon and wearing a large iron helmet who was just spying on this place. Hearing this, the imperial envoy guards immediately raised their weapons and charged toward the small courtyard. Hu Shoshin's reaction was even faster and seemed to be the most reliable. His figure flashed, and in an instant, he exploded and charged in the direction of the small courtyard. He directly jumped onto the wall and then onto the treetops. He looked down from above, and when he came back, there was still shock on his face. He directly asked, "Darren, what did you just see?" Very quickly, the imperial envoy guards searched around but didn't see anything. One Yuanzhong ran back with a blank expression. "Darren, there's no way to hide someone there." Our brothers looked all around, but where was the murderer? Qin Hui looked at Hu Shoshin and stammered, "Elder brother didn't notice anything strange? When you were listening to the imperial edict, you didn't notice anyone passing by." At this time, Zhao Fei Huang had already been helped up by Su Qingwan. Hearing this, he said, "Someone passed by? A murderer? It can't be. Sir Imperial Envoy, the Marquis of Jing'an's household is very strict." Hearing that Darren had arrived this morning, this young girl already gave the order that the family members and servants were not allowed to move around to prevent these boorish people from offending the Imperial Envoy. The Marquis Fu's family rules are like a mountain. There definitely won't be anyone who would violate them. Then it must be a criminal harboring malicious intentions. Qin Hui only looked at Hu Shoshin. In the past, Old was a fierce general in the army and was in charge of breaking through formations in the Imperial Army. He was one of the best divine archers in the army and could be ranked in the top 3 in the Tian Yuan Ming weapon chart. This divine archer paid attention to having clear eyes and ears and having a sharp divine sense. Even if it was an insect flapping its wings or an ant crawling by, as long as Hu Shoshin was willing to listen, this sound would definitely not escape his ears. Just now, everyone was kneeling to listen to the imperial edict. Only Qin Hui, who was standing while reading the imperial edict, saw that strange triangular head. But if there was anyone present who could notice anything strange, it would definitely be Hu Shoshin in front of her. Unfortunately, under Qin Hui's expectant gaze, a strange light flashed through Hu Shoshin's eyes. He then shook his head. "I didn't notice anything strange. At this distance, if someone walked past, they definitely wouldn't escape my divine sense." "Darren, did you see wrongly?" Qin Hui looked at the imperial envoy guards that ran over. Wan Yuanzhong also shook his head. "Darren, although this humble one's martial arts are shallow, it could be considered 10 years of bitter cultivation. Even if I was kneeling to listen to the imperial edict, if someone walked past, it would definitely attract my attention. There's no one." The other people were also nodding. After Zhao Fei Huang heard Qin Hui's description, he laughed in spite of himself. Bare-chested, wearing a giant metal helmet, and also carrying a giant weapon, Marquis Jing'an Fu abides by the law and is upright. How could they raise that kind of criminal? Don't mention that kind of weapon. Even if it's a saber, a spear, a sword, or a halberd used to guard the house, you wouldn't be able to find many of them in the entire Marquis Fu. Darren's eyes must have gone blurry. As for criminals with bad intentions, and so on, our Marquis Fu is kind of others. Our family customs are strict, upright, and we have a reputation outside. The entire Marquis Fu is filled with righteousness and is not something that cowardly criminals can covet. Moreover, the guards also didn't notice anything strange. Qin Hui looked around at the confused crowd. No one believed his words, but he believed his own eyes. He really did see that kind of monster. It definitely wasn't an illusion. It definitely wasn't. His mind spun rapidly, recalling the expressions of everyone just now. The Imperial envoy guards' faces were filled with hesitation. They really didn't notice it. The miscellaneous people of Marquis Jingon Fu also had baffled expressions. They also didn't notice it. Young Miss Zhao's expression was magnanimous, her gaze inexplicably thoughtful. It should be that other than being baffled, she was still pondering whether there was that kind of person in the Fu. She also seemed to be completely unaware of this. But the steward next to her stared straight at the ground, his expression somewhat unnatural. And Hu Shouxin, his gaze also wasn't right. In his eyes, there wasn't only shock and suspicion. There was also something else. In an instant, Qin Hui's heart turned cold. In his eyes, this grand and magnificent Marquis Jingon Fu was no longer safe. Instead, it was filled with strangeness and eeriness. The strange person that suddenly appeared, the clueless people, each with their own secrets. This mission, as expected, was not that simple. He quietly lowered his eyelids, hiding the coldness in his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, they were already filled with shame and shame. He smiled awkwardly. Perhaps this official is tired from the journey these past 2 days and is somewhat absent-minded. For a moment, my eyes were blurred, resulting in this kind of joke. I've really let young Miss Zhao see a joke. Zhao Feihuang pursed her lips into a smile. Imperial Envoy Darren carries the Emperor's orders and is tired from the journey. This little girl admires you very much for being so loyal to your duties. After this incident, the Imperial Edict was hastily announced. The Imperial Edict was handed over to Zhao Feihuang. In a while, it would be sent to the ancestral shrine of the Zhao family to be offered. The incense table was removed. After the ceremony, the group entered the main hall of the Marquis Fu, preparing to discuss official matters. Hu Shouxin seemed to be somewhat nervous. He first looked around vigilantly, then quickly walked over to Qin Hui's side, saying in a low voice, "Worthy younger brother, there must be a demon behind this abnormal situation. Be careful." Hearing this, Qin Hui sneered in his heart. Be careful? Be careful of who? I didn't think that you, Hu Shouxin, would also be dishonest. Now he's still pretending to be a good person? Even though he was thinking this, on the surface, he still smiled lightly. Many thanks for elder brother's concern. Little brother will naturally be careful. But elder brother's divine might is unrivaled. This Marquis Jingon Fu is also a dignified family of martyrs. How could there be thieves causing trouble? Hu Shouxin's expression was subtle, and he smiled somewhat awkwardly. This smile, in Qin Hui's eyes, unquestionably became a guilty conscience. He glanced indifferently at Hu Shouxin and then looked at Zhao Feihuang, who was walking in front. Struggle, scheme, laugh foolishly. You must feel that everything is within your control. I am an idiot who does not know anything, foolishly stepping into your trap. But don't be happy too early. The smart people in this world are not just a few of you. Who is the prey? Who is the hunter? Who stepped into whose trap? You will understand sooner or later. At that time, I will look at your stupid faces filled with regret and enjoy the joy of victory. Pretending to be mysterious, pretending to be mysterious. Do you think you can scare me like this? Watch as I beat you at your own game and show you my power first. Then I will capture you all in one fell swoop. Chapter 356. The two sides sat down, and the true confrontation began. Qin Hui drank a mouthful of tea and said without changing her expression, "Miss Zhao, I heard that in the past few days your manner was not peaceful." Zhao Fei Huang smiled sadly and nodded. "Yes, I made a fool of myself in front of the imperial envoy." Sun Lang's teachings immediately appeared in her mind. As long as there was a verbal confrontation, one had to gain the upper hand by a show of strength. Before doing anything, one had to lay the foundation and place oneself in a weak position to win the sympathy of the other party and the audience. This was the best way to borrow power. When one placed oneself in a weak, wronged, and respectable position, no matter how shameless Qin Hui was, she would not dare to publicly push you too far. Miss Zhao's eyes were bright and clear. Before she spoke, the rims of her eyes turned red. She sighed softly and said, "Back then, during the Great War of Tianyuan, the country was in danger of being exhausted. The Marquis Manor had received the Emperor's grace for generations. My father and brother did not turn back and charged into the battle formation, facing the country's calamity together. Over the decades, there were 37 heroes in the family who wore armor. Over the decades, 37 new graves were erected in the ancestral land. Until 10 years ago, my father and brother passed away, leaving this large foundation and the entire Marquis Manor to me. I am only a woman. I am weak and have no one to rely on. My knowledge is shallow. Originally, I would not be able to take on such a large responsibility. But my father and brother's heroic spirit was not far away. The old, weak, women, and children he left behind had no one to rely on. How can I let this inheritance go?" These words, coming from the mouth of a beautiful but weak girl, really made the hearts of the men present rise with tender love and respect. After all, when it did not have anything to do with their interests, most people would not hesitate to show their sympathy and kindness. Zhao Fei Huang furrowed her brows. There was a trace of helplessness in her tiredness. She said softly, "These years, although I have worked hard to support the Marquis Manor, the glory of this manor, the many acres of land and property, the countless tenant farmers and servants. Even if a man were to do these complicated matters, they would not be able to take care of everything, much less a woman like me. Even if I exert all my strength, it's impossible for me to take care of all of them. Even if there were any mistakes or carelessness, it was all thanks to the combined efforts of my family members to help me find out what I missed and fill in the gaps. Only then was I able to maintain the reputation of the Marquis' estate. How could the hardships during this period be enough for others to know?" Her voice was pleasing to the ear, her appearance was beautiful, and her expression was rich. She controlled the atmosphere very well. For a moment, almost everyone was sighing about this girl's fate. Only Qin Hui felt that something was not right. "Stop, stop. That's not what I'm asking. Why are you complaining?" However, this Ms. Zhao seemed to have touched a sore spot. It would be a little insensible and ungentlemanly to plan at this time. Qin Hui took another sip of tea and listened attentively, looking for a good opportunity to intervene. Young Miss Zhao continued to narrate the difficulties of life and work to everyone in the Central Inspection Team. She also summarized the problems of Marquis Jing and Fu. AI. Women are women in the end. When they work hard, they still have to endure countless criticisms and even covetous intentions. In the end, the Marquis Fu still lacks a man to carry the family name. The speaker did not mean it, but the listener did. Everyone in the Imperial Guard felt that they seemed to have faintly grasped the crux of the problem. Hearing this and seeing Miss Zhao's beautiful eyes sweep across the crowd, they immediately sensed a huge opportunity with their male instincts. So it was like this. Miss Zhao wanted to take in a son-in-law. Previously, they had already heard about the nonchalant flaunting of wealth of numerous fields and properties, countless tenant farmers and servants. Then seeing this beautiful and strong woman who could be said to be both talented and beautiful, then associating it with the inheritance of the Marquis title. Even the flag-bearer, one Yuanzhong Darren's breathing quickened. His heart was like a monkey and his mind was like a horse galloping. This bowl of soft rice, if he lifted it up, he could reach the heavens in a single bound. Faintly, everyone in the Imperial Guard once again took sides. With men's powerful fantasies, they already considered themselves to be Miss Zhao's natural allies. Before he could say anything, Miss Zhao said, "All these years, I've been supporting the Marquis's estate as a weak woman. Who knows how many people have been gossiping about me behind my back? Who knows how many evildoers have been secretly coveting me in Mingzhou City? They want to take advantage of the weak woman of my Marquis's estate. They either want money or her. The shameless ones even want to take advantage of both. It's fine if we just avoid those wild bees and butterflies, but those with courage and evil intentions are blinded by greed. They've actually come straight to our door with weapons in hand." When she spoke to this point, her face was pale. Her beautiful phoenix eyes still contained the fear of the past. The girl's body trembled. She was as weak as a flower that could be blown apart by the wind at any moment. Her voice already carried a sobbing tone. "My Marquis's manor is full of martyrs. My father and brother sacrificed their lives to serve the country. As a woman, how difficult is it for me to support the family? It's fine if those despicable people gossip behind my back, but why would there be evil people who broke into the Marquis's manor in broad daylight with weapons in their hands, intending to steal money and harm my family? My brother and father have clearly sacrificed their lives for the country. I've clearly worked so hard. Why won't those bandits let my Marquis's manor go? Why is it like this?" When she spoke to this point, the girl was already wailing like a cuckoo. It could be said that her voice was weeping blood. She vividly portrayed the image of a helpless but strong girl. Housekeeper Su could no longer endure it. He rushed forward a few steps and held the girl in his arms. Young Miss Zhao seemed to have found someone to rely on. She tightly hugged Su Qingwan and began to cry loudly. This cry directly caused a chain reaction. With thumping sounds, the stewards of the outer manor who had accompanied the attendants to listen and had tears and snot flowing. They all knelt on the ground and began to cry loudly. In a moment, the cries shook the heavens. It was like the scene of a group of African people who had failed to smuggle themselves into the country. The various stewards revealed their true feelings. Some banged their heads on the ground, urging the young miss not to be sad. Some banged their heads against the pillar, crying and howling that it was their incompetence that caused the young miss to be mentally tired. Some raised their heads to the sky and loudly called out to the spirits of the masters and young masters in heaven to open their eyes and see this turbid world. They only knew that the descendants of the loyal officials and filial sons had to suffer such humiliation. The maids also hugged their heads and cried bitterly. In a moment, the room was filled with a sorrowful atmosphere. The servants waiting outside did not know what was going on. They thought that the imperial envoys had begun to search the house. Each and every one of them was scared out of their wits. They crawled in and knelt on the ground. They repeatedly kowtowed to the imperial envoys and loudly cried out that they were innocent, begging them not to wrongly accuse the eldest young miss. In a moment, the situation was completely out of control. Everyone in the Imperial Envoy Guard had already rearranged their positions. Seeing this scene, for a moment, you look at me, I look at you. A great sense of guilt grew in their hearts, although they did not know where this feeling of guilt came from. The most confused person was the Imperial Envoy. Qin Hui felt as if she had been struck in the head with a stick. From top to bottom, the word confusion was written all over her body. What the F asterisk CK? 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 What the F asterisk CK happened? What the F asterisk CK happened? I haven't even started asking questions. I haven't even mentioned your suspicions yet. Why are you all crying yourselves? Hey, that. Can you all stop for a moment and listen to what I have to say? Hey, and you guys, Brother Yuan Zhong, don't just secretly wipe your tears. And you guys, where are you looking? Brother who? Why are you looking at the ceiling? Lord Qin suddenly felt very lonely, very lonely. The entire hall was filled with a sorrowful atmosphere. He was the only one who felt as if he was drowning in water. He did not know what to do, but he could not shout for them to stop. So King awkward. Hey, brother Yuan Zhong. General Hu, look at me. Why don't you give me some suggestions? What should I do now? Zhao Fei Huang, master and servant, wept together. The rest of the stewards of the Marquis Manor pounded the ground and cried with them. The men of the Imperial Envoy Guard showed pity and sympathy on their faces. Hu Shouxin raised his head to look at the sky. Outside, a group of baffled servants rushed in and kowtowed. Only the Imperial Envoy sat in his seat, incomparably embarrassed. He couldn't shout, he couldn't call, he couldn't leave, he couldn't sit. At least as a civil official, he had some intelligence and knew who the key to this matter was. Thus, he leaned forward slightly and said in a small voice that, Miss Zhao, my condolences." Zhao Fei Huang was held in Su Qingwan's arms and sobbed. She seemed to be immersed in extreme sorrow and did not hear Lord Qin's words. Qin Hui thought that the room was too noisy, so she raised her voice a bit. Miss Zhao. This time, Zhao Fei Huang did indeed hear her. The girl's body suddenly sprung up like a frightened rabbit. She turned her head in horror and looked at Qin Hui. Then, her expression became pained and she clutched her chest. Her petite body began to twitch and tremble slightly. It seemed that she was too sad and was frightened by Lord Qin. She was out of breath. F***CK, 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 F***CK. Qin Hui felt like there were 10,000 alpacas running through her heart. For a moment, the subtle feeling in her heart could not be described with words. At this moment, she really wanted to rush out of the door and run recklessly through the vast and heavy Mingzhou city. She wanted to roar at the sun. How did this damn thing become like this? Could she still be an imperial envoy properly? Su Qingwan turned pale with fright. She reached out and touched Miss Zhao Fei Huang's back. She sent in a stream of jinqi to help Zhao Fei Huang regulate her breathing. Slowly, the girl's breathing became steady. Seeing this, Lord Qin let out a breath, but he realized that he had been happy too early. When the incident first happened, Miss Zhao's strange behavior naturally affected everyone's hearts. For a moment, the crying gradually stopped. The steward, servants, and maids still had traces of tears on their faces as they looked anxiously at their miss, not knowing what had happened. The Imperial Envoy Guards were also shocked. Only when housekeeper Su came to the rescue and Zhao Fei Huang's breath slowly calmed down did everyone relax. At this time, housekeeper Su lovingly pulled Zhao Fei Huang into his arms and glared angrily at the Imperial Envoy. He seemed to be worried about his master, and his words were not polite. Imperial Envoy, you are well-read and an official of the Imperial Court. Is your knowledge not as good as mine? Don't you know that people who are too sad cannot take the slightest shock? Miss is already like this. Can't you let her cry for a while? We can't run away. Are you in such a hurry to investigate the case? These words were equivalent to a cannon shot. Uniformly, everyone's gazes focused on Lord Qin. Even with Lord Qin's thick skin, he couldn't take the various kinds of gazes mixed with negative emotions. Battered and exhausted, he cupped his hands in salute. At this time, he could only admit defeat. I was rash. I'm sorry. Su Qingwan's eyes were slightly red. She took a deep breath. Imperial Envoy, you are a reasonable person. Right now, Miss Zhao is both physically and mentally exhausted and has cried loudly. It is no longer suitable to communicate with you. There is no need to rush the investigation. I will send Miss Zhao back to rest first. Imperial Envoy, you must be tired from the journey and should stay the night at the manor. If there is anything else, we can talk about it tomorrow. Is that all right? Qin Hui's brows furrowed, and he hesitated. He was thinking about how to best respond. In this kind of situation, housekeeper Su's request was reasonable. But if he delayed like this, but just as he was hesitating, he heard Miss Zhao's sobbing voice. No need, Su Jiejia. Instinctively, Qin Hui smelled the scent of a conspiracy. Not good. Then he saw Zhao Fei Huang pull Su Qingwan to the side. With red eyes, he stood up. He first looked at the servants kneeling on the ground and berated. "Who allowed you to come in? Where are your manners?" The leading old servant kowtowed and said, "Miss Zhao, we heard the sound of crying and thought that the imperial envoy had wronged you, so we barged in to cry out for you. This old man knows that I made a mistake, but for Miss Zhao, I can't care so much. After this matter, whether you want to beat or punish, it's up to you. But this old man definitely cannot sit and watch as a good person like you is wronged." Zhao Feihuang berated, "A bunch of nonsense. My Marquis Jinggan Fu is filled with heroes and righteousness. We have a clear conscience against the heavens and earth. Above us, we are worthy of the common people. Below us, we are worthy of our ancestors. The sun is bright and the universe is clear. How can the imperial court accuse the loyal? Even if there are rumors, it's just a despicable and shameless villain purposely stirring up trouble. And the imperial envoy will definitely give us justice. You old servant, you only heard some noise and your head became hot-headed and barged in, insisting that the imperial envoy had wronged us. What kind of person do you think Qin Darren is?" This time, the imperial envoy was forced into a dead end. If he had the slightest doubt, he would become a despicable and shameless villain. How decisive was Miss Zhao? Her series of moves would never miss. Without waiting for Qin Hui to speak, she said with a straight face, "Leave and receive your family's punishment. The next time you make a mistake, you won't be let off lightly." After chasing out this group of servants, Miss Zhao stood in the middle of the hall. Even though her body was delicate, even though the rims of her eyes were red, even though it was difficult to hide her grief, even though she was previously heartbroken, she still had a stern expression. She used her delicate shoulders to shoulder all the doubts and grievances, just like what she had done all these years. Su Qingwan stepped forward and said, "Miss, your body. You should go back and rest first." Zhao Feihuang glared at her and said with a straight face, "There is His Majesty's imperial order above, there is the imperial envoy at the side, and there is the family's grievances below. It's extremely urgent. How do you want me to rest? There's no need to wait until tomorrow. Everything must be settled today." She stepped forward and looked sternly at Qin Hui. She said in a clear voice, "The imperial envoy is wise. The population of Marquis Jinggan Fu has withered, and this little girl is struggling to support the family business. However, villains coveted it, scoundrels schemed, and evildoers robbed it without restraint. A month ago, a group of armed bandits entered the Marquis Fu and bullied my family's elderly, weak women and children, intending to plunder our wealth. It was only because my family risked their lives to protect us and Six Fan School was loyal to their duty that we were able to kill the bandits on the spot and protect my family's courtyard. I originally thought that this matter was just bandits running amok, and that the Marquis Fu had meritorious service by killing the bandits. Who knew that before one wave was over, another wave arose?" Her body trembled, clearly furious to the extreme. She said sternly, "I don't know which malicious person actually spread rumors everywhere, saying that my Marquis Jinggan Fu secretly possessed a demonic weapon, so much so that we suffered a backlash from the Sky Demon, leading to this incident. The heavens have pity on us. My Marquis Fu is full of heroes, loyal to the country. Only the elderly, weak, women and children are left to bitterly support the family and not fall. Yet we still have to suffer this kind of malicious rumor, causing our loyal and fierce blood to be cold-blooded and our ancestors to be shamed. This little girl is clumsy with words and is unable to defend myself. It is all thanks to His Majesty's heavenly grace that he sent Darren here to investigate the truth and return my Marquis Fu's innocence, allowing my father and brother to rest in peace in the underworld. May Imperial Envoy Darren clarify the rumors and arrest the villains who spread the rumors and punish them according to the laws of the Imperial Court, comforting the 37 heroic souls of Marquis Jinggan Fu. This little girl is extremely grateful and will definitely repay Darren's kindness in the next life. Saying this, her expression was extremely agitated and she actually fainted. The hall was in chaos. Amidst the chaos, Hu Shoshin looked at Qin Hui with pity and then turned his gaze to the ceiling. I already said to tell you to be more careful. Chapter 357. The first meeting between the imperial envoy and the Marquis of Jingon Fu ended with young Miss Zhao fainting. This was King awkward. His face was covered in dirt. The most depressing thing was that Qin Darren only said a total of 4 sentences during the entire process. He started a conversation once, called out for young Miss Zhao twice, and apologized once. Other than that, he did not say anything else. He clearly did not do anything. It was clearly young Miss Zhao who was acting on her own. How did it end up with young Miss Zhao fainting and this official becoming the bad guy? Why was it like this? Things actually turned out like this. Qin Darren was still dumbfounded. He awkwardly watched as Su Qingwan carried Zhao Feihuang and ran towards the inner courtyard in a fluster. He watched as a group of 45-year-old stewards cried like children, as though their mother had died, chasing after them futilely. The maidservants directly fell to the ground in tears. The entire crowd started to wail again. He looked towards Hu Shoshin for help. What should this official do now, At this time, the weakness of the Marquis of Jingon Fu's administrative system was exposed. The absolute manager, young Miss Zhao, fainted. The entire Marquis Fu was like a group of dragons without a leader. The stewards were worried about their master and all ran out, leaving the Imperial Envoys group in the main hall. Everyone looked at each other. There was only a group of wailing maidservants around them. There were also some useless servants outside, leaving these outsiders to sit in the main hall. You look at me, I look at you. So awkward, But the Imperial Envoy was worthy of being an influential figure in the system. He was well versed in the ways of the officialdom. Seeing this kind of situation, he coughed dryly. Brother Yuanzhong, Wan Yuanzhong was more sentimental and also realized the current predicament. He first lamented that young Miss Zhao had to support such a large Marquis Fu and also had to deal with the slander of gossip. It really was not easy for her. He also faintly felt that with this ruckus, the Imperial Envoy's task would not be easy to complete. Just as he was worrying, he heard Qin Hui's call. He straightened his back. This lowly official is here. Qin Hui calmly said, It's not a solution for us to stay here. Brother Yuanzhong, make a trip and invite a steward who can make decisions back. In any case, make some arrangements. Wan Yuanzhong immediately showed an expression that said, Why is it me? No matter how simple and kind he was, he knew the awkward situation. The Imperial Envoy and his entourage had already caused a ruckus in the manor. Now that the eldest miss was so angry that she fainted, the people of the Marquis Manor must be extremely worried. They would naturally put this debt on the Imperial Envoy's head. Now that he had gone to call for her, wasn't he bumping into the tip of a knife? However, it was the duty and responsibility of every subordinate to help their leader do things that their leader didn't want to do. This was a principle that had been passed down since ancient times. Wan Yuanzhong had no choice but to stand up. At this moment, Hu Shoshin, who had been staring at the ceiling, finally came back to his senses. A complicated expression appeared on his face. Lord Qin. Qin Hui frowned and said unhappily, I wanted to say it just now. Brother, you and I call each other brothers. Why are you calling me Lord again? Right now, this is official business. As the Imperial Envoy, I naturally have to be respectful. This is the law of the country. Private relations can only be done in private. Hu Shoshin waved his hand. Lord, look, something like this happened in the Marquis Manor today. It's so awkward. In addition, Miss Zhao was so angry that she fainted. There's no one in the large Marquis Manor to talk about. If we continue to stay, it's not very appropriate. A cold light flashed through Qin Hui's eyes. Here it comes. He smiled and said, Please enlighten me. Old Hu rubbed his head. It can't be considered enlightening. I feel that today, why don't we go back? It's the same if we come back tomorrow. After all, Miss Zhao was so sad just now that she fainted. Although we have a clear conscience, in the end, we will leave behind something to talk about, and the people of the Marquis Manor will treat us coldly. Now that Miss Zhao is unconscious, there is no one in charge of the manor. If we continue to stay and investigate, won't we appear to be unreasonable and overbearing? Worthy younger brother, the Emperor's orders may be urgent, but it's not too late. We will first return to Zhong-Yilu and come back tomorrow to plan things out slowly. It's grand and imposing, advancing step by step. Wouldn't that be beautiful? I just knew it. You really did collude with Marquis Jing'an's manor. You said you came to help me, but it was actually to monitor me, right? Now you're directly speaking on the side of the Marquis Manor. Return to Zhong-Yilu. Heavens knows how much they can plan in one night. Heavens knows how many poisonous schemes they can set up in one night. Come back tomorrow? Tomorrow, this Ms. Zhao will pretend to be sick in bed and use an open scheme to threaten me like today. How should I respond? Should I go back with my tail between my legs? Qin Hui laughed coldly in his heart. Laughable, laughable. You, Hu Shouxin, are invincible in battle, but your ability to lie and talk nonsense is really limited. This Xiao Feihuang fainted. No matter if it's true or false, there's no harm in me waiting for her for a day. But why do I have to leave the Marquis Manor and return to Zhong-Yilu to wait? You're in such a hurry to have me leave the Marquis Manor and have me return to your old nest to live. What are you scheming? No matter what you want to do, I can't let you do as you wish. Even though he was laughing coldly in his heart, he still politely shook his head and said, Elder brother's words are incorrect. I already know of Miss Zhao's suffering. A dignified descendant of a valiant martyr actually fell into such a situation. As an old soldier of Tian Yuan and an official of the court, this younger brother is truly ashamed. I've already made up my mind to find out the truth as soon as possible and give justice to Miss Zhao and the Marquis Manor. This sincerity can be seen by the heavens and earth. How can I go back so early and let time slip away for nothing? He solemnly said. Miss Zhao was extremely sad and fainted. This younger brother is a reasonable person. Before she recovers her spirit, this younger brother will not dare to disturb her in the slightest. But according to what Miss Zhao said, there were armed robbers who broke into the manor that day and almost caused a huge incident. It was all thanks to the loyal servants of the manor that they saved and resisted. I think there is no harm in starting from this matter. After all, the testimony of eyewitnesses is also very important. Therefore, this younger brother shamelessly plans to stay in the Marquis Manor tonight. Today, we will start from a miscellaneous people in the manor to collect testimony and evidence. What does Elder Brother think? These words were said in a dignified manner without any flaws. Hu Shouxin did not know how to refute for a moment. But Big Stick, who was worried in his heart, stay in the Marquis Manor tonight? Haven't you fallen into enough trouble just now? Who do you think taught Xiao Feihuang all these things? He only gave a few pointers, and Miss Zhao was able to rebuke you until you couldn't find north. Tonight, if he had a sudden impulse and personally made a move, would you still be alive? He was really worried about Qin Hui's personal safety. Hearing this, he advised, Younger brother's sincere heart. I've already felt it. However, the servants in the residence may not be sensible. These people are easily biased, but they are extremely loyal. After today's disturbance, they will definitely think that you are deliberately making things difficult for Miss Zhao. How will they cooperate with you? Instead, it will make things worse. Why don't we wait for Miss Zhao to wake up and give the order personally? Since they're loyal servants, they must be reasonable. As long as we explain the pros and cons of this matter clearly, they will definitely cooperate. I'm truly grateful for Elder Brother's kindness, but Qin Hui's face revealed a pained expression. She clutched her chest and said to Hu Shouxin in a low voice, But right now, my ears are filled with Miss Zhao's sorrowful cries from before. Elder Brother, I, Qin Hui, am an imperial envoy, an official of the court, an old soldier of Tianyuan. How could I not know that there is such injustice in this world? The last orphan daughter of a family loyal to the country is helplessly supporting the family. Aye. He thumped his chest and stamped his feet, saying painfully, "I'm ashamed. If I don't clarify this matter, I don't have the face to call myself an old soldier of Tianyuan." Zhao Feihuang, who had won the best performance of the scene with the momentum of the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves, had just logged off. This finally gave the Imperial Envoy a chance to show off his acting skills and save face. The opponent was a rookie like Hu Shouxin, so it was an easy task. Once these tearful words were spoken, Hu Shouxin was forced into a corner. If he urged Qin Hui to leave again, not only would it put younger brother Qin in a position of being heartless and unjust, it would also make Hu Shouxin, a general of Tianyuan, seem to have no conscience. The descendants of the valiant martyrs lived so miserably. Instead of upholding justice for them, they wanted to leave. Were they still human? Were they still human? At this moment, Qin Hui spoke again. "If elder brother is busy, please go back first. I am here, so there's no harm." Hu Shouxin secretly curled his lips. "Leave? If I leave, it's the same as pushing you into the wolf's mouth. When that time comes, where will you go to cry?" He shook his head and said, "Since you insist on staying, how can I go back by myself? In any case, I still have some faith in Mingzhou, so I will stay and accompany you. If something happens, it will be better for you. At least, if Laozi is here, Sun Lang, that brat, will not be too unbridled." Qin Hui looked at Shouxin's somewhat unnatural expression and laughed coldly in his heart. "What happened? Ha! In this Marquis Jingon Fu, what could happen? Since you all treat me as an idiot, then I will fight with you right here." Just now, he used words to squeeze Hu Shouxin in order to incite Hu Shouxin to stay by his side, or at least to stay within his sight. This would prevent him from hiding in the shadows and plotting some scheme. The waters of Marquis Jingon Fu this time are very deep. Zhao Feihuang is even more cunning. If my guess is correct, there will be a turbulent scheme tonight. But I, Qin Hui, am not made of mud. You all want to scheme against me, but I also want to take advantage of the situation to scheme against you all. Tonight's scheme will definitely make you all suffer in silence. Also, Zhao Feihuang, if you want to pretend to be sick and not come out, you still have to see if this Qin agrees or not." Qin Hui bowed deeply. "Elder brother is righteous. With you here, I feel much more at ease. I think that young Miss Zhao will also be grateful for your kindness in helping. This younger brother thanks you first." The great Imperial Envoy bowed deeply, his face facing the ground. In a place that Hu Shouxin could not see, that pair of eyes shone with a cold light. "Zhao Feihuang, you know how to pretend to be pitiful, pretend to be sick, and know how to delay? Tonight, this Qin will force you out." Chapter 358. The Imperial Envoy was swift and decisive. After reaching an agreement with Hu Shouxin, he immediately sent people to handle the matter. Wan Yuanzhong, who was still being blamed, could only helplessly pinch his nose and run out. After asking for directions, he carefully stopped a steward of the Marquis Fu outside young Miss Zhao's building, saying that the Imperial Envoy still hadn't been arranged. Logically speaking, the flag-bearer had been on edge the entire time. After all, the master's anger had attacked her heart and was currently unconscious. If this matter was investigated, it couldn't be said that they had no responsibility at all. He had insensibly approached them at this awkward time. What if these stewards, who looked like they weren't easy to deal with, became angry and used the sea tiger exploding fist to hit his chest? But what made him let out a sigh of relief was that this Marquis Jing and Marquis Manor was a prominent family in Mingzhou, so they were very particular when doing things. Although the young miss was still resting in bed, the stewards did not make things difficult for her. After discussing for a bit, they selected a steward to go back. They first politely apologized and expressed their apologies. After receiving approval, they led the Imperial Envoy to where she was staying. The Marquis Fu had already prepared a residence for the Imperial Envoy. It was a special courtyard in the Marquis Fu for the Imperial Envoy and his subordinates to live in. The environment was beautiful, the layout was elegant, and the decorations were not bad. Daily necessities were all complete, and servants and maids were assigned to serve them. The etiquette was thorough, and the preparations were complete. There was not a single mistake that could be picked out. Thus, everyone secretly praised them in their hearts. It was truly a marquis fou, doing things in a grand manner. Even if they encountered such a troublesome matter, they wouldn't use any tricks to vent their anger. Everyone, the eldest young Miss attaches great importance to the imperial envoy's visit this time. She had originally planned to personally arrange this matter, but who would have thought that something like this would happen? This humble one can only reluctantly handle it. If there is anything that is lacking in hospitality, please speak to the servants and maids. The marquis fou will not refuse. The steward was very polite. He clasped his hands and said, "This humble one is worried about the eldest young miss and will return to stand guard. Everyone, please rest for a bit. In a while, there will be refreshments and food served." Wait, this steward. Hushoshin smiled and said, "This who is thick-skinned and wants to stay here for a night. Is that possible?" That housekeeper immediately revealed a mysterious smile, replying, Yes, this lowly one can make the decision. Eldest Miss has said that lord who is greatly indebted to the house of Marquis. You can stay for as long as you want. As soon as he said this, everyone glanced at Hushoshin. Qin Hui did not bat an eyelid, but she sneered inwardly. Oh, a great favor? Umph. Hushoshin's expression froze. This group of servants from the Marquis's estate, they probably think that I am the matchmaker for their young miss. He was afraid that this housekeeper would not understand the situation and speak nonsense, thus exposing someone's matter. He hurriedly said, "It's just a small matter. What's there to worry about? Sire, please arrange a place for me to stay." Understood. The butler extended his hand and invited, "This way, please. There's an elegant little house over there that's empty. Uncle Hu, you can stay there." Hushoshin's expression changed slightly. He then smiled and said, "I am a rough man. I don't deserve such an elegant place. I think this place is good. It's also close to the imperial envoy." The butler looked around and said awkwardly, "But the rooms in this small courtyard are already full. Why don't you go there, Uncle Hu? Both sides are close by." What a joke. No matter how close the distance was, would it make any difference to Sun Lang? If something were to happen tonight, by the time I arrived, Brother Qin would have already been toyed with 18 times. When Hushoshin thought of Sun Lang hiding in the shadows and plotting some evil scheme, he couldn't help shivering. No matter. We are all old soldiers of Tianyuan and are not spoiled people. The housekeeper only needs to send over a bed. Tonight, I will have a long talk with the imperial envoy and sleep on the same bed. It will be very good. Ayu Hushoshin, insist on sleeping with me. Could it be that there is some conspiracy that requires cooperation from the inside? Qin Hui's heart was filled with doubts. After thinking for a moment, he sneered in his heart. He had already made up his mind. He laughed and said, "Brother, it's not that I want to embarrass you, but only your wife can bear your snoring. Let's not sleep on the same bed. I haven't slept well for the past 2 days. I still need to make up for it today. Brother, you live in the small house nearby. It's not a big deal, isn't it? What a big-headed ghost. Why do you want to court death by yourself?" Hushoshin persisted for a while. Seeing that Qin Hui was adamant in his refusal, he planned to switch places with the imperial envoy. Unfortunately, everyone in the imperial envoy saw Sir Qin's eyes, and all shook their heads to decline. They said that they were under the emperor's orders and had to stay by the imperial envoy's side. They could not leave even half a step. Hushoshin had no choice. Seeing the suspicion on everyone's faces grow, he knew that he could not persist any longer. Thus, he resentfully agreed to the butler's suggestion and followed him to the little house to see the place. There was no other way. He could only act according to the circumstances tonight. AI, how did things become like this again? After Hushoshin left, Qin Hui's gaze became somewhat malicious. His expression changed for a long time before he finally gave a cold laugh. Let's see what tricks you can come up with tonight." Then he clapped his hands and shouted, "All right, everyone, return to your rooms and put down your things. After that, we will carry out the emperor's orders. Right now, This official wants you to visit every part of the marquee, Fu, and collect evidence. Interrogate and collect evidence from the various people in the marquee, Fu. The key questions are as follows. Number 1. Interrogate them in detail about the day the robbers entered the Fu and robbed. Don't miss any details. Number 2. He commanded calmly and assigned tasks. Everyone had a mission. Everyone agreed in unison and left energetically. The Central Inspection Team finally began their work in Marquis Jing and Fu. Then, what made people sad was that from the very beginning, the inspection team's work encountered heavy resistance. Today, the matter of young Miss Zhao crying out her grievances and anger attacking her heart in the hall of the Marquis, Fu finally spread. And as it spread, the more evil it became. In accordance with the ideology of class struggle, the chain of rumors reached the final link and naturally evolved into the version of evil imperial envoys threaten loyal and good. Eldest young Miss fainted on the spot. The imperial envoy guards that clearly didn't do anything were directly portrayed as a dark and evil force. It would be strange if the people cooperated. These people in the Marquis Fu were afraid of the imperial envoy's power and imperial power. Even though they wouldn't go as far as to verbally abuse or hit people, it was only natural that they would shake their heads when asked. Some of the sharp-tongued people were still acting strange and acting dumb. No matter how low the rank of these imperial envoy guards was, they were still civil servants in the system. Moreover, they were the kind that came from the capital. How could they tolerate this kind of filthy attitude? As a result, after the investigation was obstructed again and again, a man with a fiery temper couldn't hold back and hit someone. Then a frightening thing happened. That servant who took a punch fell to the ground with a wail and rolled all over the ground. His cries reached the clouds. Those who didn't know would think that all of his family's gold cards had been fed to Darius. His expression was pained, and his movements were exaggerated. It was as if, "I just want to scam you," was written all over his face. Without waiting for the civil servant to regain his senses, an even more frightening thing happened. Following this sorrowful cry, two poor and pedantic scholars in long robes suddenly sprang out from the corner. Their faces were glowing, and they held a brush and paper in their hands. As they read, they wrote. Their mouths were muttering things like, "This is the big news that the big incense head was talking about. Who would have thought that there would be explosive news on the first day? Good start, and other things that people couldn't understand." The civil servant was startled. Even though he didn't understand what had happened, the political sensitivity of civil servant made him realize that something was wrong. Even though he didn't know what the two pedantic scholars in front of him were doing, his instincts told him that in the blood of these two thieves flowed an aura that he couldn't live under the same sky with, the kind that was even more disgusting than the group of mad dogs from the censorate. Then he naturally went up to snatch the brush and paper. He didn't expect to be met with a fierce gust of wind. The other party used the open arms 4 divisions fist to attack him. The fist stance was heavy, and with one look he could tell that it had been practiced for a few years. The civil servant didn't expect this pedantic scholar to have this kind of ability. Caught off guard, he took a hit to the face. In his anger, he let go of his stance and once again rushed up to fight with the two scholars. The two bastard scholars were really ruthless, and they seemed to be used to fighting together. As they fought, their mouths were muttering things like, "The imperial guards are arrogant and despotic, threatening the Marquis household, and often injuring people." The more the civil servant heard, the more scared he became. In a moment of carelessness, he was caught off guard and was knocked to the ground, where he was given a good beating. The two scholars had caused great trouble. After a few kicks, they heard people approaching from afar. They looked at each other and ran away. When the guards nearby heard the commotion and rushed over, all that was left was the scene of the murder. Their comrade was lying on the ground with a bloody nose and a swollen face. Beside him, there was a servant of the Marquis household lying on the ground, covering his face and howling incoherently. This matter could not be hidden. Very soon, the imperial envoy was alerted. After Qin Hui rushed over and asked about the situation, he flew into a rage. He had been schemed against by that little girl and was already in a very passive situation. You dare to cause more trouble for me? Without another word, he directly gave him 20 strikes. But no matter what, the gazes of the people of the Marquis household had already explained everything. Some things could not be undone. The beating that had just occurred had already confirmed the impression that the Imperial Guards were arrogant and despotic, threatening the Marquis household. Qin Hui's heart was slightly bitter. There was a master in the Marquis household. This Zhao Feihuang, his mind was very crafty. He had taken the firewood from under the pot and attacked the reputation and credibility of the Imperial Guards. When he asked about the details of what had just happened, he heard that there were two poor scholars holding a pen and paper who were recording something and running away. He was terrified, as if he had fallen into an ice cave. He was not an idiot. He knew what this meant. The figure of Zhao Feihuang appeared in the Imperial envoy's mind. If someone said that this matter had nothing to do with Miss Zhao, he would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. This woman, she was really vicious. She wanted to force me to my death, but after a while, the terror and despair gradually faded away. His gaze became cold and stern. No matter what happened, no matter what method the other party used, it was all normal. Before coming here, I had already made all sorts of plans and had already prepared for the worst. The other party's life and the glory of their ancestors depended on this place. Naturally, they would be driven to desperate action and use any method. But if they think that this will defeat me, they are too naive. Zhao Feihuang, I have lost this move. I have underestimated you. However, how many more times can you win? As long as the Emperor does not remove me from my position, as long as the capital does not summon me back to the capital, then I am still the Imperial envoy. I represent the Emperor and exercise Imperial power. I control the lives of the young and old in your household. As for you, as long as I get a hold of your weakness, then it's all over. How many more times can you win? You can't lose once. Otherwise, you're dead. His expression was gloomy and uncertain. After a long time, he gave the order to withdraw. He ordered the Imperial Guards to stay in the side courtyard where they were staying. They were not allowed to go out, they were not allowed to cause trouble, and they were to be careful and on guard. The Imperial Guards had been beaten for the entire day. Another colleague had been beaten, and in the end, they withdrew with their tails between their legs. Their morale was greatly reduced. Hearing this, Hu Shouxin came forward and said a few words of consolation. Unfortunately, it was of no use. Old Hu smiled bitterly in his heart. He had just walked around the Marquis Manor, trying to find some clues. However, with Sun Lang's ability, how could he have been discovered? Not long after, the news of the Imperial Guards beating people came. This made the bitter smile on Old Hu's face grow even more. Sun Lang had only used a few small tricks and had made his younger brother suffer again and again. The difference in realms between the two was truly too great. Furthermore, Sun Lang was in the shadows. He had a belly full of evil tricks. His martial arts were superb, and his moral integrity was worrisome. The enemy had such a great advantage. How could younger brother Qin win? Even escaping unscathed would be a problem. Thus, the day passed like this. In the evening, the kitchen of the Marquis Manor served a sumptuous dinner. There was no lack of etiquette, which made the Imperial Guards somewhat embarrassed. From beginning to end, no matter how much unhappiness there was, they did not show the slightest bit of impoliteness. It really made people feel ashamed. With this kind of mood, everyone lost interest. They did not even have the usual interest in eating and drinking. Hu Shouxin looked on coldly from the side. Younger brother Qin seemed to have suffered a great blow. He had said a few words of encouragement, but received very little response. After the meal, the two of them chatted for a while before Qin Hui showed the intention of sending him off. It seemed that she wanted to go to bed early. Old Hu complained endlessly in his heart. The arrival of night was the most dangerous time. However, he had no way of telling Qin Hui this. It was truly unbearable. With no other choice, he could not stay for long. He could only resentfully leave the imperial residence. In his heart, he made up his mind. Today I'll be tired and keep watch around the side courtyard. If Sun Lang wants to play tricks on younger brother Qin, he'll have to go through me first. At this time, night had already fallen. The Marquis Manor was brightly lit with lanterns. However, it was said that Lady Zhao was still resting in bed. The Imperial envoy was also very aggressive. The entire Marquis Manor could be said to be gloomy and gloomy. No one was in the mood for nightlife. Tonight, the Marquis Manor was much quieter. Many of the courtyards had extinguished their lights early. However, only Hushoshi knew that this dark night and quiet atmosphere was a good opportunity for someone to make a move. Zhao Fei Huang was completely Sun Lang's echo. Even if that little bastard said he was going to kill Qin Hui, that little girl would still order the guards to sharpen their knives and prepare their spears. Everything that happened today was definitely Sun Lang's handiwork. It was definitely all part of Sun Lang's plan. Other people might not know about the two poor and pedantic scholars who beat people up today, but how could I not know? They must be Zhang Jinyuan's henchmen. This stinky tofu seller was very obedient. In just a few short days, he had already finished preparing for the newspaper. Ah, my poor younger brother Qin. He has given him another huge piece of evidence. If this matter gets out of hand and the court finds out, you won't have anything good to eat. Hushoshin thought in his heart. Thinking of Qin Hui's sorrowful cries last night, he made up his mind. Younger brother Qin's entire life's hope was here. He definitely could not ruin his future. Today, I have to keep a close eye on Sun Lang and the courtyard. I have to protect younger brother Qin. I definitely can't let him do anything irreversible. At this moment, someone suddenly patted him on the shoulder. "Hey, have you eaten yet?" Hushoshin said without hesitation. "I just ate." Before he could finish his words, he suddenly realized something and slammed his left elbow backward. But in the next moment, his vital acupoint on the back of his heart was grabbed, and then his head was hit. His whole body fell to the ground. He could only see a triangular head carrying a large metal plate. He said in a muffled voice, "When I come up with a plan, when have I not secretly removed the enemy's spies and reinforcements? Idiot, after fighting together for so many years, you can't even think of this. You haven't improved at all." Hushoshin glared angrily. He raised his trembling hand, but Sun Lang pushed the piece of metal away. "Qin Youqiao is also an idiot. I've beaten him so many times in the past, but he still doesn't learn his lesson." A sense of powerlessness engulfed his entire body. Old Hu rolled his eyes and lay stiffly on the ground, unable to move. Under the curtain of night, Brother Triangle carried the large blade and grabbed one of Old Hu's hands. Like dragging a dead pig, he dragged Big Stick Hu towards the forest in the distance. "It's a pity there aren't any haystacks around. Forget it, you just have to put up with it. In a moment, you'll see a good show." I feel that at this moment, with Qin Youqiao's intelligence and brain matter, he must be arranging commands and setting up an inescapable net, waiting for me, this criminal, to deliver himself to his door. As expected, at this moment, the Imperial Envoy's room was brightly lit. The members of the Imperial Envoy's guard quietly stood in the room. Qin Hui's face was as heavy as water. He coldly said, "Everyone, I won't say much. Qin Hui is under the Emperor's orders to go to Mingzhou to investigate a case. But this Marquis Jingan Fu is a dragon's pool and tiger's den. Strange things happen one after another. If you say it's a coincidence, I don't believe it. It must be man-made. Brothers, for this case, the resistance is great and the difficulty is great. It far surpasses what you and I can imagine. But since we are under the Emperor's orders, we must overcome all difficulties, investigate the truth, and make the criminal receive the punishment he deserves. Everyone, this time, we are united in honor and disgrace. Qin Hui is here. Brothers, please help me with all your strength." A dark and cold light flashed in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "If nothing unexpected happens, there will definitely be a change tonight. We will set up a trap here. Everyone, return to your rooms. Don't forget to wear your clothes and prepare for battle." At that time, according to my plan, we will capture the criminal in one fell swoop and fight a comeback to vent our anger. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.